Welcome to this morning's Women in Baseball conference. My name is Tara Krieger, and as Leslie said, just if you're not speaking, turn off your video, silence your speakers. Our first panel this morning is being a Black woman is my supervisor. Being a Black woman, I'm so sorry. It's 11:30 here, but even so. Being a Black woman is my superpower, featuring Lonnie Morey, Maacah, and Jacara Ware. These are three high-powered women who work in Major League Baseball, and we didn't quite know if they'd all be here, so they taped their conversation beforehand, and then afterwards they did all manage to get here, so they'll be doing a Q&A live. So we'll be watching the video, and then we'll be talking to them. So I believe that Kathy is going to cue up the video, right?
Oh, that's great.
Uh-oh. Guys, I can't hear it either.
Kathy, you're going to want to relaunch.
I can't hear it either.
Yeah, Kathy, you're going to want to relaunch it because we can't hear it.
There we go.
Welcome everyone to Being a Black Woman is My Superpower discussion. Thank you to SABR for celebrating African American women in baseball during this year's conference. So we are three women working in baseball in different capacities, and today we're going to have a very candid discussion. So without further ado, I have the pleasure of introducing Jacara Ware. Jacara kickstarted her career in the sports industry with the Arizona Diamondbacks in 2013. Jacara manages the team's digital platforms, including website, mass email communications, and much more. She is responsible for all promotional messaging, advertising, media partnerships, and marketing programs. As a council member of the D-Backs for Change initiative, she works side by side with the organization's leadership to ensure alignment of the organization's business, cultural, community, and diversity and inclusion strategies. An entrepreneur at heart, of course, Jacara founded Heartware Marketing in October of 2017. She combined her passion for elevating brands with her marketing expertise to build a company that showcases the authenticity of her clients. Jacara is actively involved with the Arizona community, serves on the board of directors for Women in Sports and Events, WISE Arizona, and on linking sports and communities. She utilized these platforms to connect with the community, offering support and mentorship to her peers. So excited that we have Jacara with us today.
Thanks for the introduction, Maacah, and thanks again, SABR, for having us. I'm delighted to be here with my two friends, Lonnie and Maacah. So I have the pleasure of introducing Lonnie Morey, featured recently on HBO's Real Sports. Lonnie Morey is the first, did I say the first? Yes, first and currently only Black female player agent certified by the MLB Players Association, and one of the very few women on that side of the negotiating table. Boasting a roster of over 30 amateur and professional players, Morey has 16 years of experience advising and representing players at all levels of the game. As the president and CEO of Sports Management Partners, Lonnie has made her mark as a highly regarded baseball agent in both the U.S. and international markets.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here today with you guys. I think our title is awesome. I think we're going to have a lot of fun, but most importantly for me in this moment is introducing Maacah Scott. Maacah is Assistant General Counsel of the Chicago White Sox, a position she began in June of 2020. Maacah drafts and negotiates contracts with employees, sponsors, vendors, and independent contractors. She also handles issues related to intellectual property, international relations, risk management, and assists with litigation. Prior to joining the Chicago White Sox, Maacah was Associate General Counsel for the Arizona Diamondbacks, where she was with the Diamondbacks for 6 seasons. Maacah was also an associate professor at Arizona State University for 4 years, where she taught ethics and legal issues in sports. Maacah is an active in the community and sports industry. She founded WISE Arizona, Women in Sports and Events, with a mission to equip women with the tools necessary to succeed throughout their careers. She also founded Tom Tom Dance Foundation with a mission to help youth find their power through dance. Maacah has received numerous awards and recognition, including recognition on Business Journal's national list of influential young executive and Phoenix Business Journal's top 40 under 40 list. The list goes on, but Maacah, I am so happy to be here with you and Jay today.
Thank you for that great introduction. I truly appreciate the kind words. So I think Jacara is going to start us off.
Well, there's certainly a lot for us to unpack in just 30 minutes with our interesting title, Being a Black Woman is My Superpower. But if it's okay with both of you, I'd like to kick it off with one of my favorite topics, authenticity. And how do you show up being your authentic self, and how has that helped you get to where you are today?
You know, I kind of want to start by giving an example of when being authentic. There was a time when I wasn't authentic and it cost me a job. And from that moment, that moment kind of taught me, okay, you need to be authentic at all times and not just trying to say the correct things and fit into a box. You know, again, I was at the interview for a job that I really wanted, and I was so focused on giving the right answers that I wasn't relaxing myself, and I didn't get that position. You know, luckily, I did get another opportunity to interview for that position a year later, and this time I was myself and I was authentic, and that's when I got the position. You know, you have to remember that when you get that close to these roles, you're already qualified. You need to be bringing your entire self to the role, and that's the only way to kind of, to one, build that true relationship with the people you're working with, but then two, you bring a level of uniqueness, your background, your experience, that you need to share and bring to that role, and people need to know what those different things are that you bring to the role. So I constantly remind myself of that, and that one mishap made me remember, hey, you always have to show up as you.
I can totally relate to that, Maacah. So for me, even while I don't do job interviews, it's along the line of every time that when I first started going to the ballpark and scouting players myself, it was like I felt like there was this box that I was supposed to fit in, that I was supposed to act like, sound like, be like the dudes that were out there, because I didn't have an example to follow. But on top of it, being one of very few minorities even at the field, you know, on top of being, you know, the only woman that wasn't a mom. And I spent probably a couple of years trying to, you know, dress it down, you know, slick my hair back in a ponytail, down to the minute details, all the way through trying to fit my language to match that of what guys would talk about. And it wasn't until I released my own personality, released my feeling that I had to hold back who I was to fit in somebody else's box, that I really started to come into my own. And that has ended up being the greatest part about what I do. And it's allowed other people to gravitate towards me, especially clients.
And for me, thankfully, Marion Rhodes, our former chief of HR, she introduced Maacah when she was at the Diamondbacks. But for her, setting that the tone of I'm going to be myself and be my authentic self here, and her coming before us to show the D-backs, you know, I can be my authentic self here. So that helped me, at least being brand new to the D-backs. And now that has definitely helped translate into me being a leader and others that follow suit in the organization. And with, you know, the others that are out in center field, they can be themselves. And when I started in sales, so I think it translated well. And thanks to Marion again for setting that tone of I can be a Black woman in sports and be myself and not have to code switch. I can be Jay at work and Jay outside of work. So thanks to her for setting that tone. And then obviously with Hardware, that's what I build my brand off of. That's how I help others build their brand and elevate their brands off of authenticity, being their true selves. So I love it. I'm happy that Marion set the tone for the D-backs, and obviously with my own job, I can set my tone there with my clients. So.
That's awesome. One thing that I want to throw in, it was like, now when I show up at the ballpark, it's like, yes, I am a Black woman out here. Yes, I am. And so own it, girls, own it, men and women.
Yeah, absolutely. So of course we all face challenges. So Lonnie, I'm gonna kick it to you and say, you know, kind of what are some of those challenges you have faced, overcome? If you have any specific stories you want to share?
You know, my challenges have ranged, some no different than any other male or female that would be out there. The ones that are more specific to being a woman and a woman of color have related to whether or not people give you the credibility or that instant sense of belonging. And so I used to find myself being tested a lot. And, you know, I'm good at tests. So those would be, you know, some of the specific challenges.
With me, just being Black, being young, and being a female, and also my face tells everything, and talk about authenticity in meetings, watching your tone and making sure everything that, you know, you want to get across doesn't come across as, you know, you're attacking someone or your true intent, and just being genuine. But that's something that I always have to watch out for, how my delivery comes across when I'm in those meetings. And again, just because, for one, I am a female, I want to fight for something, and if I want to fight for something that I'm passionate about, sometimes that doesn't always come across as nice as it should, or as nice as they think it should.
What about you, Maacah, on the legal side?
Well, of course, I face, you know, many challenges similar to you guys, just kind of being in a male-dominated industry just in general. And then also, you know, I am a woman, I'm Black, I am young, and I'm an attorney. And when people think about an attorney, number one, somehow they picture a old white man. I don't know why, but that's kind of the visual. So, you know, a lot of times I'm mistaken for either an assistant or some other role. So, you know, it's being underestimated, it's being misunderstood, it's all these different things, but sometimes I use these challenges to my advantage, right? But other times, you know, it depends on what the situation is. I got one of 4 ways that I handle, you know, all the crazy comments and things that I hear. You know, and I'll quickly tell you guys. So one, for those that are kind of you know, poking at you, you know, it's intentional, they're just trying to get a rise out of you, you got to ignore those, right? But for those that are not malice, it's not any, like, you know, they're not intentionally trying to do something negative, I got to go one of 3 ways, right? My go-to is normally I use humor. I normally use humor because I like to kind of make sure we're moving it forward in a positive direction, and maybe you didn't know what you said was a little crazy, silly, so I need to figure out a way to correct it but move forward in a positive way. So most of the time I use humor. Another time I might question what you're doing, right? I might ask you a question about why you said the thing that you said, because sometimes it may be me. Maybe I need to check myself, and maybe I'm making assumptions, right? So let's both try to understand why you said what you said. And then other times you just need to be direct, right? So even if they didn't have any malice behind it, they didn't, you know, mean to harm you. Sometimes you just have to be direct and let people know what they said or did was not okay because of X. And getting comfortable to do that comes with relationship building. So it depends again on what the circumstances are, what was said or done, the way in which I handle it. But again, I think most people don't do so with malice. So I like to use humor.
I find myself doing that a lot too. What about you, Jay?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
If there's
To a certain,
no.
Yeah, to a certain extent, it's like, all right, I'm not gonna fluff it. If there is a chance to bring humor, I will. But for the most part, I'm gonna tell you exactly how it is, and that's why relationships are so important, because you have to understand where they're coming from. And, you know, the person that it's coming from, it's genuine. It's not attacking. I'm going to give you the straight up answer that you need. I'll help you. We'll figure this out together, but I'm going to give you straight up how I feel.
Right. Do you guys find that it has been beneficial, or have you had allies along the way that have helped to, buffer some of those burdens? I know for me that some of the men that I've come across while being out at the ballpark or at the winter meetings, and that have really been a champion for believing in my ability and in the work that I've done. And that's really helped me along the way. What about you two?
Oh, absolutely. I think, well, first of all, we know that none of us get to where we are alone. And I think it's very important to have allies, both men and women, and diverse in a number of ways, the same way that we think we should have a seat at the table because of the unique perspectives that we have. We should have people in our circle that have unique and diverse perspectives, right? That's how we continually grow. So I think your allies need to be diverse as well. And of course, you want it to be a give-take relationship. So you want to make sure that you're giving something to that relationship as well. But no, it's very important to have allies. We all need some support to kind of push us forward.
Yeah, and talk about being women in a male-dominating industry. Like, we need the males that are in there that are fighting for women and equality to help us and to back us. So without them, honestly, it's going to take us 10 times harder to fight on our own. So without the male allies, without the other women bringing each other up instead of kicking each other down, we need it. We need more allies, both on men and women.
I think it would be great if we started championing a group of where men can come together with strong women or women in baseball to say, hey, I'm an ally. Maybe at the winter meetings have one of those sessions. We'll get them shirts made that say I'm an ally.
I would say the men tuning into this panel today they're allies. Absolutely.
And if you need help learning how, call one of us. We'll help you. This one's interesting because I'm the oldest. Trying to figure out what advice would we give our younger selves. And I'm just going to say, for me, own it, girl. Own it. Screw everybody else. Just own it. Your mistakes and all that will make you greater later. That's me.
For me, it's don't be a know-it-all. Continue to learn, be a great listener, be a great friend and colleague, and just be yourself. Grind hard and just always stay true to yourself.
Those are some really great ones. I'll take those advices too. But I guess for me, my younger self, I think people need to, including my younger self, is not be afraid to reach out to people, right? People are willing to help. Don't be afraid to reach out to men, women, different roles you might be interested in. People are much more approachable than you think they are. So just don't be afraid to ask.
Absolutely. I tell you what, though, these younger people, they are bold in on social media. I get a lot of those requests, as I'm sure you guys do too. What would you advise? It's like, okay, proud of you. All right. Our title. You guys know? So what do we mean by superpower? How do you feel that your superpower has given you the ability to drive forward personal and professional change? Jay? Because you're doing it every day. I mean,
yeah. And that's exactly what I was going to say. Honestly, just like Nike, just doing it. I think we come from a background of women not just working hard, 10 times harder than the male counterpart, but as a Black female working 20 times harder than any other female in the industry to try to get things done. So I feel like being a Black woman, like coming from our background and me being the second oldest of my siblings, like I'm just going to get it done person. So even, people in the organization, well, we just love you because you just get it done. I'm like, well, thanks, but I'm just doing my job. That's just me. Like, that's who I am. So being Black and coming from our backgrounds of just getting it done is who I am. Just do it.
And for me, I think it's It's really kind of, when you're bringing your authentic self, right? You know, being a minority, being a woman of color, when you bring your entire self to a organization, those things are your superpower, right? Because you're so used to being faced with challenges that you're a good problem solver. You're going to be able to adapt. You're going to analyze problems differently and from different perspectives. You're not going to shy away from those challenges because you have continually faced challenges, right? So this is the work challenges, those are just kind of small in comparison to all the challenges you face daily. So, being a problem solver and being able to deal with one issue at a time, this is something that I would say that I'm very good at. And I think other minorities and others that have faced similar challenges are going to be good at, because this is their day-to-day.
Similar, for me, because the three of us, we've talked a lot about the things, our superpowers that get misinterpreted. And I think one of the simple ways to describe it for other people is that the next time you think of, or whether it's regarding someone else, or maybe it's something that you've been labeled as yourself, when we hear the term angry Black women, it's not, for me, it's like when I met individually each of you in work type settings, I saw strength, I saw power, I saw, just this swagger and the way that you went about your business, and having the ability to ask you a question and get a direct answer, where some people take offense to the directness, and where I'm relishing in the directness and in the tone, because thank you, we're just getting ish done. And that, to me, so again, I would suggest and ask that, instead of changing the narrative around angry Black women, and recognize that it is the superpower. There is a strength to that. It's not an angry thing. It's let me help you get this done, sis or brother or whoever, or my boss, I got you. That's not angry, that's getting after it. That's a superpower. So with you guys, when you were little girls coming up, was it getting into baseball, or was this just some sort of natural transition? For me, it was just a natural transition.
Baseball was never on my radar. I'm from Florida, so it's all football, basketball down there. Baseball was nowhere near my radar. Even though spring training's in our backyard, it was never on my radar. But sports, I love sports. I come from a family of sports, so the natural transition was more of the marketing and sports, and that's what interests me in baseball.
Yeah, Lonnie, that was a good question. So I was always interested in sports, and always wanted to be an attorney, but kind of like in undergrad is when I realized, okay, wait, I can kind of meld these passions for sports and law together. It wasn't specifically baseball that I was after, but it was kind of those top three sports. So I was thinking, basketball, football, baseball in one of those spaces. Baseball just presented me with my first opportunity, and now my love for baseball has continually grown.
That's awesome. I think it's, pretty special that we have that we've taken the opportunity to get involved in a sport that lacks so many of us. We get to be champions for diversity, right? Without even trying. Hey, you guys, with respect to our superpower, which is sometimes misinterpreted as angry or unapproachable, a question or a comment came up a couple weeks ago on a conference that Jay and I were part of, where a woman asked the question or made the comment that she would like to know how to safely approach Black people and have a safe conversation.
What do you mean a safe conversation?
It seemed like I think it threw, well, I know that it threw both Jay and I off completely. I think it was a broad statement. And so when we're talking about the way we go about our business and our ability to just hone in on multiple issues at one time and go after it, some people may find us to be unapproachable or see it as a barrier to communication or conversation. Or when they've tiptoed around a topic, whether it's work related, whether it is addressing all of the issues that are going on in today's world, they've spent so much time tiptoeing around the approach to have dialogue and are, coming right back with a quick answer or a direct answer. I think maybe she was saying that she has personally found that intimidating, but I'd be open to what you guys think of that.
Well, I think number one, I always appreciate someone that's being honest and direct. Now, whether it comes out wrong, okay, we can deal with that, but I'd rather you just be honest and direct. And then also, I think people are really too concerned about, tiptoeing around certain things. Just start the conversation. How do we move forward if we don't start the conversation? Whether it's because of race, whether it's because of age, all these different reasons that people, decide to separate themselves, really is an opportunity for us to grow, right? And I think that if you just treat people the way you would treat family, right? You can have a conversation. We all have, maybe you got an aunt that's difficult to deal with, or you have a younger cousin that's a certain way. Your family has all of these different personalities, but somehow you manage to interact with them. You don't have issues there, right? So it's the same thing. You have different personalities. You interact with different types of people. If you come into that conversation with the right mindset, just have the conversation. No matter how it starts, just have the conversation so we can continue to move forward.
Yeah, and that's the big thing with today. Having those uncomfortable conversations are very important. So I want you to bring this to my attention, whether, I know you or not. Like, it's all about the relationships and how you present it. And, whether you know someone in the organization, I love authenticity. I would love that you actually approach me. And I don't care how. Like, there's not a safe conversation. It's just having a conversation. That's what's safe these days. Like, actually having those uncomfortable conversations is what make it safe. So be genuine. If it's not genuine, then do not come to me.
Right.
If you don't have anything to say and it's not genuine, just don't come to me. But if you honestly want to learn, you want to listen, you want to have those conversations, and you can even start off with, I'm uncomfortable even asking you this, or I'm uncomfortable even bringing this to you, but I want to know, I want to learn, and I would respect that so much more than you not being intentional. What about being the box checked? So we're talking about being intentional and how some organizations are now just doing things just because, or they want to make a statement. How do you feel about that? Like, do you feel like you're sometimes a box checked and you need to check their intent, or I don't know, just throwing it out there.
In baseball, we've got the C-League rule, and there are plenty of individuals that I personally know that have declined interviews as Black men because they knew they were not coming in or being brought in to interview with the intent of actually being considered.
Luckily, I have not felt that that was ever a position that I was in where I felt like people were just trying to check a box. I think I worked for really genuine people that saw my abilities and saw what I brought to the table. I think I've also worked for people that did think about diversity when they hired, which is a good thing. But they thought about diversity at a number of facets, and they thought about it in the right, meaningful way, knowing that you bring a little bit something extra in addition to your what's kind of on your resume. So I think I have not kind of experienced that check the box, but I know that there's a lot of people that do have that feeling, and I think that feeling is warranted at times.
Clearly, we both work for the D-backs. Well, Maacah has, and she's gone on to the White Sox, but I'm still with the D-backs, and the people that I work with, they are genuine about what they do. I have checked the intent, from the day I walked in, and I was hired through the MLB Diversity Summit. So I don't think it was a check the box. I mean, I'm still here, unless they're still checking, but I think the people that I work with have been genuine, but I know there are some box checkers out there, especially with everything that's going on and with people just throwing out statements and not acting behind it. So I just wanted to make sure we address that and make sure the companies that are actually, hiring for diversity and just bringing people in for applications and the interview process, like I want to make sure that other people know, like, don't just be that box check, like make sure they're genuinely interested in you. Question them, ask them.
Right. Maacah, how exciting for you. Your organization has been at the forefront of a lot of diversity, breaking a lot of diversity barriers.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. Pretty awesome to be a part of an organization that's trying to move forward, that recognize there's a need for change and is actually, taking some actions.
And it's your hometown, right?
It's my hometown.
Oh, they're in trouble. Yes, Chicago has a new superhero.
Well, this is an amazing conversation, ladies. This was awesome. I had such a great time just, having just some candid conversations with you guys. And thanks again to SABR for having us today. And thank you to all the attendees. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of the virtual conference. Thanks, guys.
Hello? That was really, is this working?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Okay. Yeah, that was a really great video. I hope you guys found that interesting. I certainly did. Now we have some time for Q&A with the panelists who I'm looking, their side conversation during the video was as amusing as the conversation itself. So, I have a few minutes. Put your questions in the chat box. I didn't see too many questions, so to speak, yet, but it looks like there's a lot of talk more about the sort of safe spaces issue, and kind of if they could elaborate a little more on what exactly how we sort of start these uncomfortable conversations, and what the definition of a safe space is. Seems to be the big chatter right now. So I don't know if you guys wanted to comment a little more on that.
Jacara, Maacah. Okay, so what I would say is, and I mentioned this in the chat, that one of the things that, in reflecting on it today, one of the reasons that I didn't ask in that moment, what do you mean by that, is because I don't think I could have found a positive way to ask. And it was like this, another Zoom call, and it took me back. And, this also goes to the lack of diversity when, it was just me and Jay in the room, in the Zoom, and you have all these other people. We've had so many experiences where when we ask that question, like, well, what exactly do you mean by that? Or saying, I'm offended by that. Could you ask me maybe a different way? You pretty much know that the others generally, at least circa 2020, are going to either think of you as being too sensitive, think that you're blowing it out of proportion, think that you took it wrong. And so that's one of the things that makes it difficult when there is a lack of diversity, and to have the conversation even for us on our side. At least me, I'll speak for myself. So basically you gotta be ready to go to battle. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think we covered, having those uncomfortable conversations in the, can you hear me? I think
Yes.
we covered it in our video, just having those conversations. And in the chat, someone mentioned, even when you're not intentional or you are intentional, but you don't understand, just coming with that right mindset and also being willing to learn and listen. And then also taken away from that is here's how I can approach this moving forward, or I'm coming to understand, not to attack or not to hear your answer that, what I thought you would already say. So I think we covered most of it in the chat, but again, I think just having those conversations, and even if there is no intention, but you're clearly coming to understand and listen, and that's very important. But in order for us to move forward, like, we have to have those safe conversations. Like, that's what makes it safe. Just come, just ask.
And I'll quickly add in, I don't think there's an absolute correct way to start these conversations. The point being is that you still need to have them. And even if they start uncomfortable, as long as you're having these conversations with people you've built relationships with, then you guys will move forward. But there's not an absolute correct way to start these conversations.
Perry asks, what specific programs or initiatives have the women here started within their front offices?
Well, for one, more recently, DBACs for Change. I'm on the council, and that's one that we recently started, not specifically to help women get in the door, but all minorities. So whether it's Hispanic, it's women, it's female, it's Blacks. So that's something that we're actually working on, and it actually came out of the most recent events over these last couple months. So DBACs for Change, dbacs.com/changes, where you can find all the information, but we're working with community partners and finding ways to get more young Black male and females playing our game.
And for me, I actually just started with the White Sox in June. So I have not put any programs in place with the White Sox, but while I was in Arizona, I founded WISE, Women in Sports and Events, and that crosses many sports. And basically what we do is we try to promote professional development for women in all different areas of sports. And then in addition to that, we make sure that we partner with these different organizations and go inside of their facilities and do programming, figure out what those needs are for the women in that organization, and make sure that we're providing them with the tools to succeed.
I'm sorry, Perry, I don't work for MLB. I work for myself. I'm an agent, so I'm on the other side of the table than them, but I do mentor a lot of young girls and boys and older ones, but I do a lot of work in underserved communities, try to get more of our kids playing.
Actually, I found it interesting in your conversation how you all seem to talk about you didn't necessarily choose baseball, so to speak. You kind of wanted to work in sports, and it ended up choosing you almost. And especially with the fact that there's a decline in the talk is the decline in African American baseball players these days. Do you think about that? Do you think about ways to get them more involved? Is there a way? Is there any solution to that?
Well, I mean,
yeah, or ways to get them involved.
Well, yeah, that's a very hot topic for me, because here's where the phraseology gets a little bit muddy. Our boys are playing. That's not the question. The problem is the disparity between the opportunities that they're afforded once they get into high school and then on to college. I do know, I got a call the other day, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say, so there's somebody at MLB. MLB is trying to work on an initiative that will help to pave the way in what is a significant problem between our kids that and their college opportunities. For example, you have colleges that will commit them, and then at sophomore, junior year, then when it comes close to the time that they're supposed to be graduating from high school and going on to college, somehow that opportunity changes because of one, either the families can't afford the financial impact. Okay, that's one. The second part is there have been, last year, for example, right before the draft, out of 13, I had 5 that were committed to D1 colleges. And then the scholarship changed and the pandemic was used as an excuse, but it's been the same every year. The same crap gets pulled every year. And, oops, you know, he missed this class. And one kid in particular, oh, he missed this class. We forgot to tell him that it was needed, but now he doesn't qualify. And then 3 more that say, we'd really like him to start at the JC that we're affiliated with. And then he can come to us in 2 years. Very common. So our boys do play, but there is a disparity in the opportunities that they are afforded to take it to the next level. Sorry.
Lonnie is, you know, kind of closer to that space, so I think she did a good job of kind of breaking down what some of the issues are.
Maacah, did we lose you? I'm sorry, it froze. Okay. So Will Grant asked an interesting question. What parts of the history of Black women in baseball do you wish people knew more about? Are there parts of history that have been important to you?
Are playing the game and our leadership at the executive level.
I mean, honestly, all of it's amazing to hear, you know, so some things I already knew, but definitely some new things are coming out of my participation in this year's conference. But I mean, just knowing that, you know, Black women have been involved at every level of the game is just amazing.
Jacara, do you have an answer?
No, I mean, I don't want to.
Okay, that's fine. That's totally fine.
No,
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, no, everything that has over the last 2 days, you know, that we've or that you guys have showcased is awesome. And I actually told this to Leslie a month or so ago that I think something like this is important for the resource groups like DBAC's Women and the women resource groups that are in each organization, because they don't know this history. And it's very important. And this is something that, honestly, I haven't even paid attention to before I started working in baseball. So I think what you're doing is great. I think you're going to continue doing great things with these conferences. And the more you can partner with other women resource groups and women in the game to actually help them understand the history, the better we're off in the future. So thank you for this platform and actually using your voice to showcase everything.
Okay, so we have time for one more question. Looks like Meredith DC asks, there was a lot of discussion among players and the media about the boycotts by the players recently. How did you react to the boycotts?
I'm gonna let Miss Jacara and Miss Maacah go first.
I think everyone should have their own way of boycotting, protesting, whatever they feel they need to do. I think when it's driven by the league or they're waiting for the league to give them a statement, then that's not authentic and they're not themselves. And for the players, they need the encouragement and the permission for it to be safe. And I think Lonnie can touch on some of the things that, you know, some of her players have done in the past that wasn't seen as nice as it is today, or it wasn't well received years ago. But I think the players
3 years ago.
Yeah, so the players using their platforms, and I think everyone coming together and the players and the teams actually giving the players permission, or not even permission. They don't need permission to speak out and to be an individual and do what they feel is best around these situations. So I think over the last couple months, I'm excited to see the players use their platforms and do what they feel they need to do. And whether that's, you know, as a team, if they want to go out and play, if they decide they want to stay in the locker rooms in the clubhouse, then fine, do what you feel. I don't think that they need someone to tell them how to boycott or what they want to do for protesting or how they want to go about doing it. So having their own platforms and being able to do what they want to do without a team telling them or their coach or, you know, the player next to them, is like, no, you let them do whatever they feel they need to do.
Now I'll quickly add my 2 cents. One, there's a lot going on in the world right now, as we know, right? We got pandemics, we got protests, we have all of these different things. And I think MLB should be applauded a little bit for allowing players to kind of opt out or make those decisions without penalties. So whatever choices the players have made during this time, it's really based on a number of factors. And I think it's okay for them to make whatever personal choice they think is best for them. And I applaud that Major League Baseball saw that and gave them that opportunity.
Like Jacara mentioned, for me, my client, Bruce Maxwell, took a knee 3 years ago. He was the first and only player to take a knee up until this year, this opening day, or not even opening day ceremony, pre-season. And it was not welcomed. It was absolutely supported by the A's. I will go on record and say that. But the infrastructure within Major League Baseball did not support what took place after. There's a whole lot of mental skills and support when a guy is just maybe called up too soon, but there was no support when this kid was getting death threats. It was one of those things where he was encouraged to do something different, meaning keep it at home. There was no support whatsoever. And so as far as, you know, how do I feel about the protests that took place or the display that took place this year, you know, I think it's easy when you stand on the shoulders of giants. There was no sacrifice. And, you know, to use Maacah's words, they were allowed to. There was a collaboration between the players and MLB to make that happen. I didn't think that was enough. And on that note.
Yes, on that note. So thank you very much. This was really interesting. Everyone found it as interesting as I did, for sure. I wish you could keep continuing, but we have another great presentation coming up right after this. So thank you very much, ladies, and we'll move on to the next presentation. I just want to remind everyone, oh, yes. Well,
thank you.
So I just wanted to remind everyone, we're running a little over, but it's okay, we have a short break. After the next presentation, stay on for the first winners of the raffle being named. Our next presentation is Leslie Morey is giving a presentation on breaking the rules, the statistical impact of rule changes in the AAGPBL. Dr. Leslie Morey is the George and T. Gladys Abel Professor of the Department of Psychological and Brain Sciences at Texas A&M University. He has published over 300 articles, books, and chapters on the assessment and diagnosis of personality and mental disorders, and has served as a consultant to numerous agencies and organizations, including the Houston Astros. And with that, I will hand the mic over to Les Morey.
Okay, hopefully people can hear me, and I'm going to try to share my screen. So hopefully this is going to work. Are people seeing this?
I can see it.
Okay. I have to apologize in advance that this is going to be considerably less exciting than the previous presentation. So I appreciate you all for bearing with me, and stock up on coffee. And part of the reason I'm a little pessimistic is that I sort of represent the sort of old sabermetrics tradition, which has sort of a reputation as being a bunch of number crunchers. And I'm a quantitative social scientist, and so my main vocation is being a number cruncher. But to me, the purpose of crunching numbers is to tell a story. And I think that one of the things about baseball that makes it unique in sports is that a lot of the story of baseball is told through numbers. And so I think a lot of baseball history really comes to life in looking at those numbers. And one of the things that's always fascinated me is that the numbers of the All-American League are really interesting. They're really peculiar in terms of the way that baseball history has played out. And so I wanted to sort of talk about that story. Of course, nobody in my field is very interested in that story. And so I come here and I'm telling this story to people who are the most knowledgeable folks on the planet about this. So if I'm telling you things you already know, again, I apologize in advance, but I found it to be an interesting story. Numbers in baseball have always been sacred. There are certain magic numbers that, everybody, hallows, having 60 home runs or a 400 batting average. And baseball fans have a lot of animosity towards anything that taints those numbers. And so when Roger Maris hit 61 home runs to break Babe Ruth's record, they put an asterisk next to it because he played in more games. The steroid era, all of those numbers, those home run numbers are considered tainted because the view is that these people were cheating. So let's take a look at some of those numbers just to give you a feel for things. This is a 12-year interval from 1990 to 2001. This is the home run percentage in Major League Baseball. So these are the years of the steroid era. 2001 is significant because that's the year that Barry Bonds hit 73 home runs to break the all-time record. And really, it looked like the steroids really began maybe around 1990, maybe the late 1980s. And one of the things that you'll notice in these numbers is that there was, between the high point and the low point in these 12 years, 12 being significant because that's how long the All-American League was around. In these 12 years, the home run percentage grew by 58%. It increased by 58%, which is a pretty dramatic increase, suggesting that steroids had something to do with those numbers. Another era where there was a big change in home runs was the transition from the dead ball era to sort of the golden age, the pre-war era. These are the years from 1927 to 1916. 1916 was very much in the dead ball era. 1927 is when Babe Ruth hit his 60 home runs to set a record that lasted for 30 plus years. In the difference here was 3.93 times as many home runs percentage-wise as were at the low point of the dead ball era. And it was right in this span in here when Babe Ruth sort of made a transition from being a pitcher to a catcher. That's also, by the way, when our last pandemic occurred. It was right in that transition. Because Major League Baseball ownership figured out that fans like to see home runs, they wanted to encourage it, and they went to a new ball that was more likely to be hit further. And so those were all really regarded as dramatic changes in Major League Baseball. Well, let me show you the home run percentage over the course of the All-American League, which lasted from 1943 to 1954. So this is the All-American League down here. And you'll notice that it started right smack at the dead ball league home run percentage. And it ended at sort of the peak of the steroid era home run percentage. In other words, in these 12 years, the All-American League somehow managed to go from dead ball to the steroid era in a remarkably short period of time, certainly not from 1916 to 2001, but just in 12 years. Something interesting was going on, something strange was going on, and I don't think it was steroids. My conclusion is that most of it had to do with the fact that the rules were constantly changing. And so I want to talk a little bit about those rule changes and how they seem to impact these numbers. Now, the All-American League probably everybody here knows. This is a very famous picture of the first 4 women signed to contracts. And you'll notice, if you take a close look at the insignia that's on their outfits here, that's AAGPBL, the All-American Girls Softball League. It was really originally framed as a softball league. This is the Kenosha Evening News on the eve of opening day in 1943, the first game played in the All-American League. And there's a very much front page news, but all of it, the All-American Softball League may bloom into major circuit. Girls impressive and tune up for softball owner. You know, Mickey Mickelson offers color intrigue to the new softball league. It was really very much sort of touted as a softball league, and the rules were pretty close to softball. I mean, there were some small changes, but it was really much closer to softball than it was to baseball. Which leads me to ponder why. I mean, why softball? I want to point out that softball was never created to be a game for women. It was created in the 1880s in Chicago. I'm a native of Chicago. I was very happy to see Maacah representing the White Sox, because it seems like there's an awful lot of Cubs paraphernalia that I've seen so far in this presentation. So I just wanted to have a shout out there. But growing up in Chicago, I'm keenly aware as to why softball originated in Chicago. And the reason is that the winters are long and really cold. And so you can't play baseball inside. And the reason that softball was invented in Chicago is they wanted something to play indoors during the winter, and they wanted something where you couldn't hit the ball as far. And so they ended up inventing the game of softball. And it seemed to catch on with some of the high schools in Chicago for girls teams, maybe a decade later. But over the next 3 decades, really by the 1930s, it really seemed that softball was a woman's sport. There were semi-pro leagues, a lot of company teams. There were certainly a lot of organized teams in Chicago that most of the original All-American players were drawn from. I've never quite understood why it was that softball evolved to be a woman's game and that baseball was viewed as a men's game. And I have a sneaking suspicion that it had something to do with attitudes. And some of these attitudes are reflected in some of the things that were written about the All-American League at the time. And some of these quotes are really cringeworthy about the abilities of women athletes. And the thing that's particularly cringeworthy or alarming about these quotes is that most of these quotes were written by people who were trying to sell this as a product. I mean, in other words, these were people that were representing the league and trying to sell it. And you kind of wonder, is it really, this is the best sales job you can do? So for example, James Henderson was writing in the 1947 Muskegon Lassie's yearbook. And so this is like a feature sports writer writing about the All-American League, sort of describing it. And he's got quotes in this yearbook, like things like, women, most of them are poor hitters. We're still not convinced girls can play men's baseball. There's a glimmer of the possibility that maybe they can play an acceptable thing if we cut everything to their size and strength. That was in 1947. Also in 1947, during a barnstorming tour in the Augusta Chronicle, they were trying to sell tickets, and they say, well, these girls play real He-Man baseball, as if there's something He-Man-ish about the rules of baseball. And then they rattle off a bunch of characteristics that are actually not characteristic of baseball at all. They're kind of characteristic of what was going on in the All-American League. But at the time, the 70-foot base paths, 43-foot pitching distance, and 11-inch ball, that really actually isn't what was going on in Major League Baseball. And even the league president, after Wrigley was out of the picture, Max Carey later became the league president. And he talks about that we have to make concessions in terms of a slightly smaller diamond and a slightly larger ball. In other words, we have to change baseball because otherwise women wouldn't be able to play it. Now, the rules changed in a variety of ways. When it started, it looked a lot like softball. The ball was a regulation softball, 12-inch. The length of the base paths was a little bit longer than what's typical in softball. 60 feet base paths are typical in softball. So they stretched it by an extra 5 feet. So that was a difference. The pitching distance was 40 feet. I'm not certain, in other words, how far was the pitcher from home plate? Today, contemporary softball, the distance is 43 feet. And I'm not sure what the standard was at the time, but that distance was closer than what contemporary softball is. And the pitching style was underhand. It was fast pitch, like contemporary softball, but it was underhand pitching only. And then over the years, the rules changed in many ways in all of these areas. With almost every season, there was a new rule, which had to be extremely disruptive as you try to sort of learn this game, and suddenly the rules are changing on you. And basically what was going on is that as the rules evolved, the game started to get closer and closer to what was the standard in Major League Baseball. Okay, so by 1948, they went to overhand pitching. And at the very end of the league, in the last year of the league, they went to dimensions, a ball that was basically a Major League Baseball, 85 instead of 90 feet base paths, but quite close, and 60 feet, which is basically what Major League Baseball is, with overhand pitching. So by the end, it was something that was closely resembling baseball. At the beginning, it was something that was closely resembling softball. And so an interesting question is, well, how did those changes reflect on some of those assumptions that we saw in some of the quotes that I was showing? I want to show a little clip. I'm hoping this is going to work, of what was going on in 1943. So this is a game in 1943 between South Bend and Racine. Okay, there's the pitch, and there's a stolen base. Okay? And so that's just a little clip. But there's a lot of little things in that clip that are really interesting about the All-American League. So I'm going to hopefully play it again and stop it. First, there's the pitcher, and you notice, okay, there she goes. She brings it in pretty nicely. That ball's coming in pretty good. And remember, she's closer to home plate than standard softball is. So she's not very far away. Another thing I want to point out that you can't see very well is she's throwing from a mound, which was not characteristic of softball either. They were throwing from a mound. Another thing that you can't really see, but we know there's a runner on first base, is that the All-American League, even from the very inception, was different in that it allowed base runners to lead off. Right? So with a runner on first base, that runner over there, she's leading off. So in this picture, basically you're seeing that everybody in this picture knows that base runner is going. In fact, this is clearly a pitch out. You notice the catcher's coming out of her crouch. The batter is trying to obstruct as much as she can. Second base is breaking for the bag to be able to try to apply a tag. So everybody in the park seems to know that this is going to be a stolen base. And so there goes the runner, and there she goes. She's in, safe, right? One thing that's kind of interesting is you notice that she didn't slide. Now this is a pitch out. Everybody knows she's stealing, and she didn't slide. There's a lot of reasons why she might not have wanted to slide. One is sliding in one of those skirts is not something I would ever want to try. And there are a lot of injuries, resulting from sliding in these rough infields in a skirt. Now, this was Lois Florite. She definitely knew how to steal bases. She stole 113 bases in 1944, which is really more than any men in the past 120 years have, with two exceptions, one of whom, Lou Brock, we lost this past week. But she didn't slide. The runner in the little film clip didn't slide because she didn't have to. It wasn't close, despite the fact that it was a pitch out, the catcher was ready, second base was ready, but the play wasn't even close. And the question, I just wanted to point that out when we start talking about stolen bases in just a minute. Now here's a 1949 clip. By now, the league has gone to overhand, okay? So here, this is a warm-up. You can see the mound is very clearly marked, a lot easier to see here. One of the reasons it's a lot easier to see here is that this is shot during the day. The previous game was shot at night. In fact, most of the All-American League games were played at night. Almost all of the weeknight games were played at night. There were a few exceptions, but for the most part, the games were played at night. Now, looking at her form, she's doing pretty good. I mean, that is a very nice pitching form. I would not want to bat against it, but I also want to point out she's about 20% closer to home plate than a major league pitcher is. So you're staring at somebody who's pretty close to you and throwing that ball in really well. And so that transition to overhand pitching, it's really an interesting point, is how much did that really affect the league? Well, one of the ways that it affected the league is that a lot of the women, some of the best pitchers in the league, really abandoned the All-American League when that transition was made because they were underhand pitchers. There was a rival league, the Chicago National League, that sort of stayed with softball style pitching, and a lot of them sort of defected to playing in that league. So again, it was a big disruption to a lot of the players to move to that. And so it's interesting to try to figure out, well, what was actually the impact of moving to overhand pitching? So let's go back and take a look at that home run progression that we saw that was so sort of striking between 1943 and 1954. What I want to do is take a look at how some of the changes that are going on in this 12-year span related to different kind of rule changes. And one thing is that when you're talking with numbers that are averages, it can be kind of misleading to be thinking about just a change in an average, which is a change in the mean, without considering the variability that exists in those data, right? So we need to sort of think about, well, how big a change is it relative to what we typically see in terms of variability in the data, which is the standard deviation for you statistical buffs out there. And so one of the things that's very popular in social sciences is to try to understand the effect of something in terms of an effect size. One of the popular effect sizes is how many standard deviation units did that change represent? So how many standard deviation units did this change between 1943 and 1944 represent? And so this is a D effect size that's on the axis that's over here on the right. In the red is the effect size. And again, in social sciences, usually people consider a 0.5 effect size to be a moderate effect size, certainly something that's noteworthy. That's half a standard deviation change in something. And so I'm going to focus on changes that fall within that effect size as representing something that's probably not random variability, but rather it really seemed to have an impact. And so it turns out there's actually 3 of those where that 0.5 effect size is noticed in home runs. First is there was a big drop between 1943 and 44. So what happened there? Well, one of the things that happened is that they moved the base paths to make them longer, 68 feet. And another thing is that they made the ball slightly smaller, from 12 inches to 11.5. I've got these changes listed in the order in which I think what had the impact. I can't prove that because unfortunately this is a great experiment, but not a very well designed experiment. So a lot of traditional statistical analyses can't be done. But as it turns out, I think it was the lengthening of the base paths. And why is that? Is because I think that most of these home runs that were being hit in the first year of the league were inside the park home runs. They weren't hitting the ball out of the park. This is a softball. The softball was not meant to travel as far as a baseball was. And so because the base paths were not very far apart, they were hitting the ball well, but not far. And as a result, they got a fair number of inside the park home runs. When it moved to a longer base paths, I think that was responsible for that reduction. In 1950, we noticed that there was a pretty good increase, not necessarily that obvious looking at the mean, but a pretty sizable increase, and because they went to a livelier ball, a ball that was supposed to be hit further, because they were starting to figure out that the fans wanted more offense. And then there was a huge increase in 1954, the last year of the league. And then this year is when they really went to baseball. They started playing with something that was essentially a baseball. They started pitching from a distance that was essentially a baseball regulation distance. And now we had a bunch of home runs, but these home runs were going out of the park. These were not ones that were inside the park home runs. These are ones that they were hitting over the fence. So there was a huge change as a function of going to that ball. Now here's the batting average progression in terms of the effect sizes. And again, we see that a lot of those years are still the ones that are operating. We saw, again, a reduction in batting averages in 1944. I think that's primarily because of the smaller ball. It's easier to throw a smaller ball than a larger ball, at least to me it is. And so I think that the pitchers were bringing it in a little bit faster. And so we started to see batting averages drop. That drop really peaked in 1945. In 1945, the league average in the All-American for the All-American League was a 188.188. If you hit 188 in Major League Baseball today, you're out of a job. You may as well be a college professor because you're not going to keep a job. But that was the league average. And this is why people like James Henderson would write things like, oh, these women are poor hitters. But again, you have to think about what that number represents. For one thing, they're facing good pitchers. Those pitchers now are throwing things with a smaller ball than softball from a distance that may be closer than regulation softball, from a mound, which Major League Baseball has demonstrated how high up the mound is can really affect hitting performance. The base paths were getting longer, so they were having further to run to first base to get a hit. And then finally, the lights were bad. I mean, most of these games were played at night. They're being played in small cities that didn't have contracts with Globe Life or Minute Maid Park to build these ballparks. In Peoria, it was a converted football field that only had lights on one side of the football field. So all the light came from the third base line. And so trying to hit under those conditions, I think it explains why the 188 average was going on. As we got a livelier ball, the average started to increase. And then finally, by the time we got to baseball, that increase had really sort of taken off, that these women were hitting in close to the 270 range when they started hitting a baseball, when we started to push the pitchers further back so they had more time to react. The stolen bases early in the league were just crazy, and they steadily declined for the most part throughout the history of the league. Very famous player from the All-American League, Sophie Kuris, the idea that we have to cut the baseball field down in size to accommodate women, I think she kind of put the lie to that. She stole 201 bases in 1946 in about 50 fewer games than Rickey Henderson did in 1982 when he stole 130 bases. If Leslie Heafy somehow manages baseball to convince baseball to include the All-American League records in baseball history, nobody is ever going to break Sophie's stolen base record. That was just a remarkable feat. But in terms of looking at the effect size, really the only time where we saw an effect size that was kind of noteworthy was the drop in 1945. Looking at the rule changes there, they moved the pitcher back a little bit, but I don't think that was the factor. I think the main factor was that people weren't getting on base, that all of these factors were sort of combining to produce a low batting average, a 188 batting average, and there just weren't as many base runners, and so there weren't as many people stealing base. But over the course of the league, that stolen base total tended to decline, but of course the base paths were also getting further and further apart. In terms of strikeouts, it was actually pretty stable. Nothing hit a 0.5 effect size. There was a little blip in 1948. That's when it went to overhand pitching. And so in fact, the transition to overhand pitching really did not affect things very dramatically relative to a lot of these other things. There was a sort of a momentary blip in strikeout percentage, but you notice that it actually pretty much returned to what was happening previously when it was either underhand or sidearm pitching. So again, just to reiterate, we're seeing a transition steadily in the rules from something that looks a lot like softball to something that looks a lot like baseball. Steady transition towards this Major League Baseball dimensions and equipment. So let's compare things to Major League Baseball. What was going on in the same years that these women were playing? So because Major League Baseball was going on in these years, there was some concern it might stop during World War II, which is partially why the All-American League was founded, but it continued the whole time. And this is what the batting average for men's baseball looked like during those 12 years. I think one of the things that's remarkable is how stable it is compared to what was going on in the All-American League, where the numbers are all over the place, again, suggesting something dramatic is happening. And it's also important to consider that there were some big changes happening in these years in Major League Baseball. At the end of 1945 season and in 1946, a lot of the men who had been in the armed forces for World War II were now returning. And so what was a lot of the players that were playing in 1943 and 1944 were either too old or they had some sort of a medical ineligibility for service in the armed forces. So many of the best baseball players at the time, pre-war, were returning during that time, but it really didn't affect much of anything. And then, of course, another thing that was going on is that Jackie Robinson debuted in 1947, and that was followed by a succession of stars from the Negro League. And even the introduction of all of this talent really did not disrupt this batting average tendency. And Jackie Robinson was a great hitter. Why is it that, the batting average didn't start to increase when we had all these great hitters? Well, of course, there's an equilibrium there because now we have Satchel Paige pitching to Jackie Robinson. And now we have Larry Doby and Willie Mays playing center field and catching, balls that Jackie Robinson hits. So it's interesting the way this equilibrium still manages to play in Major League Baseball throughout those years, while the numbers at the same time in the All-American League were just all over the place. Again, for home runs, we've sort of seen that there was an upward progression in Major League Baseball, but again, a dramatic progression in the All-American League. But again, what we're seeing both in the previous slide and in this slide is as the years go on, things are looking more and more like the numbers for Major League Baseball, as the rules look more and more like Major League Baseball. Stolen bases, that was not a particularly popular, stolen bases were not popular back in the late 40s and 50s. But the women's numbers were starting to drop towards a number that now in contemporary years would be kind of standard. But certainly it's getting closer to what was happening in Major League Baseball as the rules evolved to be more similar to Major League Baseball. And for the most part, strikeouts were pretty comparable. So what's the story here? What's all the conclusion? I think one is that baseball, as the rules are represented in Major League Baseball, these statistics have sort of a natural equilibrium, and that's why these numbers have meaning for fans that are fans, they're preoccupied with these numbers. It's because the numbers give meaning to the game. You tell me somebody's numbers and I can tell you something about them. In many other sports, that's really not the case. The early All-American League rule set, I think, was based on stereotypes that to sort of approximate what was going on in baseball, we had to somehow scale the game to these women, to their athletic abilities. I notice there's a presentation later today that I'm looking forward to that sort of compares these abilities, but certainly that was the stereotype. Well, they can't hit a baseball because they're women. And to have anything resembling baseball, somehow we would have to make it more softball-like. But in fact, the numbers, I think, dramatically are to the contrary. The more the rule set looked like baseball, the more the numbers look like baseball. And so I think one of the take-home messages is that it's just interesting to me that in 1954, by the end of that season, I think we had pretty convincing data that if you have these women who were very good athletes playing baseball, they would produce numbers in a game that was baseball. But the sort of advent of the popularity of softball and the support for softball in women's sports in high school and college, particularly the Title IX jump that in support for women's sports was kind of forced on a lot of these colleges and universities. All of those resources went into softball. And I think that to a certain extent, we may be looking at, it's the ghost of James Henderson, sort of assumptions about, well, softball's a women's game and baseball's a men's game. Although I think the statistical record is pretty convincing to me that in fact, when women play baseball, the game looks a lot like what happens when men play baseball. And so I'm sort of disappointed. I wish that I could go watch a Texas A&M university supported women's baseball team play. I'm not certain that's going to be happening anytime soon. Well, thank you for listening to that. These were some of my resources that I used. Madden's book is a great resource. I have a research budget for eBay where I buy things like these Dell books from the 1940s and 50s that actually had a very nice section on the All-American League, extensive statistical records, and then of course the AAGPBL website. Thank you.
Great presentation, Les. So we have time for one or two questions. I see one from Cecilia. Actually, I think it's two questions on stolen bases. So I'm going to combine them to one. Cecilia says, did you compare stolen base numbers in the AAGPBL versus the dead ball era of MLB? I'm curious if they were slightly more similar than the 40s, 50s MLB. And Will Graham asks, why were stolen bases not popular?
In men's baseball at the time, because they were popular in women's baseball. No, there were far more stolen bases during the dead ball era, particularly the pre-turn of the century, in the 18th century dead ball era. And so the all-time stolen base record in MLB is held by a dead ball era player, a pre-1900 player. So after 1900, Rickey Henderson holds the record. But even there, Sophie Kuris was stealing almost twice as many bases per plate appearance as these dead ball era players. In other words, the numbers were just appreciably higher than even sort of the peak dead ball years from the 1880s and 1890s. But certainly those early years of the AAGPBL were much more similar to 1880s baseball than they were to 1950s baseball. With respect to the question of why weren't there a lot of stolen bases in the men's league, I'm not really certain. I think that what had happened is that the sort of home run was becoming increasingly prominent in how people thought that they were going to be scoring, and so for the most part, most of the stolen base leaders were stealing 30 bases a year, not 100 bases a year. It was just not that these players weren't fast. I mean, there's certainly famous footage of Jackie Robinson, stealing home and things like that. But even he didn't steal that many bases. I think it was just kind of a stylistic manager preference that they felt that it was not, not a wise thing to do. It wouldn't pay off.
And I'll ask one more question. Do you have a sense for how closely the players and fans at the time were able to track AAGPBL stats in real time?
Well, my impression is that in the local papers, the statistical coverage was really quite good. And so I'll hold up my collection of these Dell books. I mean, I really think it's sort of a testimony to the fact that there was interest nationally in these things. So that these Dell books were released every year. They cost $0.25. This is the 1947 issue. And on the cover here is Stan Musial, who was the player of the year in 1947. On the back cover is Sophie Kuris, who was the player of the year, in 1946 in the preceding year. And so this entire back section was all about the statistics of the AAGPBL. Here's a picture of the winning team, of the Racine Bells in that particular year, or the champions in that year. And so it seems to me, one of the things that this is made possible is they seem to keep pretty good records, unless you played fewer than 10 games. For the most part, the statistical record's very complete, better in many instances than some of the early years of the Negro Leagues. And so by virtue of the fact that they kept these records, I suspect there was kind of a thirst for those records, or they wouldn't be, being published in things like, mass market things like the Dell books.
All right, great. Well, thank you very much, Les, for an interesting presentation. You can look at all the comments later. A lot of people were commenting on the graphs and the research. It looks like now we're running a little short on time, so we're going to skip the raffle and do it at the end of the day. And I'll hand the mic back over to Leslie.
Thanks, Tara. Yeah, thanks, Tara. Great way to start our morning, and just wonderful conversation going on. I realized that we ran over a little bit, but it seemed worthwhile. We are going to get back on target starting here at 1 o'clock. So this is your chance to take a quick stretch break and grab a beverage if you need it. And we're going to start back up right about 1 o'clock with we have 4 more great presentations this afternoon, and then we'll do the raffle at the end of the day. Thanks. And yes, Perry, you're lead off. So if you want to test or anything, feel free. Hi, Marlene. You're muted, Marlene. There
Good
you go.
morning. How
Cool.
are you?
We're good. So we're just going to give everybody a minute or two, and we'll start just a couple minutes after 1 so that we kind of get back on.
Sounds good. I don't see Perry.
She just stepped away for a moment and said she'll be right back in a second.
Okay.
It'll be all good.
What an amazing morning.
It certainly has been.
Great conference.
All right. Is Perry back yet? I don't see Perry.
I see Perry.
Hey there, can you hear and see me?
We can
Yes.
hear and see you. So we'll just give everybody, we'll let you get set up. We'll give everybody a minute or two to get back.
Let me just find my glasses.
That would be important.
All right. So I was going to do this out on the porch here in Florida, but it has been so windy and rainy and thunder rumbly kind of weather for 3 days in a row now that it's just not a good place to do it. So
No, that would be all right. Well, I think, Marlene, I'm going
Are
to
we ready?
turn it over to you and get us started again. So I'm going to turn my stuff off and let you take it away.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, welcome back, folks. We haven't been gone too long. I hope you've enjoyed the presentations and proceedings as much as I have. I've learned a lot, and this morning's conversation was so interesting and so very important. And we still have more. But a little bit of housekeeping. Please mute your audio and turn off your videos so we can manage bandwidth a little bit better. So, and after this, we'll have the raffle winners and some closing remarks, so please stick around. I'm excited to introduce our final speakers and their presentations. It's another very interesting and varied group. Perry Barber will tell us more about Maud Nelson and her lasting impact on the game. Callie Maddox will share an interesting and insightful look at editorial cartoons and consider the depiction of women in those images. Australian baseball player Luisa Gauci will bring us up to date on the work she's been doing, looking at the physical disparities between elite men and women baseball players. And then to wrap it up, we'll have a conversation with Jennifer Madison, who's the first woman director of the Association of Professional Baseball Players. So Perry, if you're ready, let's turn this over to you. Perry needs a little introduction.
Oh.
She's been umpiring since 1981 and has worked tirelessly to bring more women to umpiring. She's umpired at all levels of the game and all over the world. She's a board member of the IWBC and the director of women's services for the AAGPBL, and an advocate and mentor to all women in baseball. She's also a one-time Jeopardy champion and was an opening act to Bruce Springsteen during her sordid, and that's her word, past as a wandering troubadour. Perry, it's all yours. Thank you, Perry.
Thank you, Marlene, and all of the other speakers who have preceded me. This has just been fantastic, illuminating, thought-provoking, sobering, and inspiring. So I'm very honored to be part of it. In my most recent presentation, oh wait, I gotta share my screen, right? Okay, here, let's see if this works now. Now. Do you see anything?
Yes.
You see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So this is Maud Nelson. And in my most recent presentation about her at the SABR 50-year anniversary conference back in July, which seems like a million years ago right now, my focus was on demonstrating the merits of her candidacy for induction into the Hall of Fame by the Early Days Committee, and how the current rules and restrictions on who is or isn't eligible support Maud's candidacy rather than obstruct it. The Hall of Fame recently announced that the vote for the Early Days candidates consideration has been pushed back to next year, 2021, for induction at the ceremonies in Cooperstown during the summer of 2022. And while this is obviously disappointing, this delay also gives me, and anyone here who wants to help spread the word about Maud, the chance to make that much greater an impact on the Historic Overview Committee members who submit the list of 10 finalists to the baseball writers, who then vote on which of those 10 will be inducted in 2022. So getting the message out about Maud's legitimacy as a Hall of Fame candidate via social media, blog posts, podcast episodes, newspaper and magazine articles, academic treatises, graphic novels, country songs, and good old word of mouth will be paramount to focusing the kind of attention on her that will be persuasive enough to convince the Overview Committee and then the writers to vote for her inclusion in the Hall, so Effa Manley won't be the only woman there anymore. 16 years is long enough. That's how long it will have been by 2022 that Effa has been the only woman inducted into the Hall so far. So we're about to take a deeper dive into the reasons for Maud's worthiness as a candidate. And you'll see a timeline emerge that shows her vast and far-reaching influence over generations of ball players that started more than 100 years ago and extends into right now. This, as you see, is Maud in all her fierce glory as a star pitcher who drew large and enthusiastic crowds to the ballpark wherever she played. And this is how she started out. Okay, hold on. How do I, there we go, okay. This is how she started out. Check out the 6th entry on this passenger manifest where it says Clem Brida. That was Maud Nelson's given name when she was born in northern Italy. And she came to Ellis Island as a 14-year-old immigrant girl. And she and her family settled in Mahanoy City, Pennsylvania in 1895. And that's where Maud learned to pitch as a teenager from a man named Jack Stivitz. Now, Jack Stivetts had been a Major League Baseball player for 10 years. Actually, he still was when he met Maude, but he took to her and taught her how to pitch. He also tutored another pretty famous girl ball player of the day, Lizzie Arlington, and Lizzie and Maude even played on the same team one year. So by 1897, just a couple of years after she'd arrived at Ellis Island as a teenager, Maude was already making a name for herself as a pitcher of some renown. She played on the Western Bloomer Girls, the Cherokee Indians, Boston Bloomer Girls, and later went on to own and operate several of these franchises, giving hundreds of young American women the opportunity to play baseball all over the world and get paid for it. Back in the 1920s and 30s and teens, Maude's fame spread, and so did her reputation for running a sound operation that didn't prey upon, exploit, or sexualize the women who played for her. And in an era when there were lots of suspicious characters who did exactly that, Maude's integrity and care for the women that she hired to play baseball was genuine. One of her players, this is a poster from one of the teams that she played for. She played for a lot of teams and formed a lot of teams. And one of her players was a very young and a very tiny Edith Houghton, known as the Kid. And this is Edith as a youngster playing for the Bobbies. That was not a Maude Nelson team. And here she is as a grown woman who parlayed her playing prowess into a career as an outstanding Navy veteran and then the first woman scout for the Phillies. Now, we've heard Cat Williams talk about Lefty Alvarez in her brilliant talk about her the other day. And Lefty is the subject of her current book, but her next book is going to be about Edith. And I have a feeling it's going to be a blockbuster. There is intrigue, ambition, forbidden romance, and lifelong passion for baseball, all there in the story of Edith's remarkable life. And I can't wait to read about it. So the image of wholesomeness and probity was important to Maude, and she embraced the kind of publicity that highlighted those attributes. Baseball was more than a business to her, it was a calling, and it was a way for her to offer something few entrepreneurs did as successfully as she did. The chance for girls and women to play baseball and get paid for it, to be professional baseball players. Because there was really no infrastructure supporting this kind of enterprise back then, Maude just went ahead and created one herself. That's the kind of innovator and leader she was. Her career in baseball lasted more than 40 years. From her pitching days to her ownership and overseeing and operating of multiple women-only teams that played often to thunderous acclaim, unlike the depictions in the press from those days that usually portray women ball players as less athletically gifted than they were pleasing for men to look at. Her influence on the next generation of ball players begins to manifest in players like Rose Gatchak. Now, Rose played for Maude in the 1930s when she also was very young. And then she went on to star in the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League as one of its most outstanding and longest tenured members ever. I think she played for 11 of the 12 years that the league existed. Maude retired from baseball by the time the AAGPBL began play in 1943. And she died, sadly, in relative obscurity at her longtime home near Wrigley Field in Chicago in 1944, when she was pretty young, 63. By then, Rose Gatchak was tearing up the AAGPBL pea patch, and another of Maude's young proteges, Margaret Giselo, was charting a course for herself that decades later would make a mark on baseball history in a big way, at least for the New York Yankees and the Los Angeles Dodgers. So this is Maud at the end of her career. And this is a notice in the paper giving her 2 sentences for the remarkable, noteworthy life that she led. And this is her protege, Margaret Giselo. Margaret and her brother, Tony. Margaret's brother taught her to play baseball when she was a young girl growing up in Indiana. And this is a kind of a recurring theme in a lot of women's baseball origin stories. The women who play learn to play from a brother, sometimes another relative, and soon surpass the teacher in talent. As this happened, Margaret played for Maud when she was just 16 years old, and you're about to hear her speak in her own words, talking about parlaying her baseball exploits into a college education, another recurring theme, and a subsequent lifelong commitment to teaching. She became a celebrated and respected tennis instructor at Arizona State University and partnered with the Sun Devil baseball program, teaching dance and agility skills to thousands of students, probably thousands of students, over her 26-year association with ASU, including 37 players who went on to become major leaguers. And this is Professor Giselo during her time at Arizona State. She looks like a very nice little old lady and teaching dance to all of these big, robust baseball players. I would love to get into the Arizona State archives to see some of those photos, but I was fortunate to find this video that you're about to hear right now. All right, here we go. This is Margaret Giselo from the Arizona State University archives.
Phoenix in 1953. I guess at that time I was particularly interested in sports. And my brother Tony, the oldest, played sports, played baseball, so he taught me how to play baseball. So I played some baseball. It was on a boys' team, it wasn't a girls' team. And I did all right. Go ahead, Jess. You go back to 1928. Sure. So talk a little bit about playing baseball on the boys' team. Okay. You were on a winning team. Tell them about going to Chicago. Oh, see, I forgot that. You tell her that. Oh, see, I don't remember it too well. I have a bad memory, you know. So you're going to have to help me. Let's see. Yes, I was asked to go to Chicago with the team. With the team, that's right. And we were winning. Yes, we were winning, but did we finish all right? You helped to run. Oh, that's right. But you should tell the story because I forgot. I want you to tell it. Go ahead. I need your help. I'll help you. Go ahead. Okay. You get the run. I got the winning run. Yeah. That's right. I got the winning run. Mm-hmm. And what happened because of that? When the team won, the other team registered a protest. Yes, they registered a protest because they said I was a girl and I wasn't eligible. What team was this? It was a Chicago team, I think. But it was American Legion. Yeah. Baseball. Yeah, American Legion baseball. Yeah, right. Good thing my second memory is here. Yeah, it was American Legion. And the baseball commissioner? Oh, yes. He signed a baseball. That one, you mean? He signed a baseball and gave it to me. But I've now given it to Cooperstown Baseball Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. And ceremony ceremony. They changed the rules because of you. Oh, they changed the rules, and women were not allowed to play afterwards. Right. The rules didn't say that before. No, it didn't. And they said it just caused too much trouble because they had to have separate dressing rooms and all that kind of stuff, and it made it more difficult for them to do the job, I guess. I squeezed in before they remembered anything about that.
Or they knew that women would want to do that.
That's right. That's the primary cause, I think.
Can you tell her about playing baseball from Long Island when you were 15?
Oh, I think I've forgotten about that. Maud Nelson.
Maud Nelson.
Yeah, Maud Nelson had a girls' team out of Chicago.
This is professional.
Professional. Oh, yeah. So I earned some money to help me through school by playing baseball on her team. And so that was helpful to my family, anyway. They didn't have to come up with all the money.
You must have been a pretty good player. What position did you play?
Did I play second base for them? Part-time someplace I played first base, I know. And I may have played second base for her. Well, anyway, first base and there both, I played both.
So we just heard and saw Margaret Giselo speak about her ball playing days with Maud. And before that, when she played American Legion ball in Indiana and caused an uproar at the national tournament in Chicago that year that prompted American Legion muckety mucks to change the rules. Because, you know, we are such a bother. Anyway, we also see several more recurring themes for women in baseball. They learn to play young from a family member who takes their talent seriously. They face myriad obstacles to playing at all because there are limited opportunities for them to play anywhere except on local boys teams. And inevitably, when they do get the chance to play, someone in charge gets all upset and declares that girls can't and won't be allowed to play because, you know, it's just, we're too delicate, we're just so demanding, we're being unreasonable, all of those old tropes that were always ridiculous and just as ridiculous, even more so in 2020, but they're still occurring. So another one of the recurring themes that we see in the video is the one of, if we see it, we can be it. When girls see role models who look like them or inspire them for whatever reason, they're motivated to reach beyond their grasp, to move beyond their comfort zones, to challenge themselves, to chart new territory in arenas where women may have not yet succeeded, not for lack of talent or ambition, but because of lack of opportunity and support. And opportunity and support is what Margaret Giselo provided for those 37 Sun Devils who became major league players. And you've been looking at a list, partial list, too many to put on one page, that baseballreference.com collated so beautifully. So thank you, Sean Foreman. And here's the rest of the list. And if you have been able to see, there are some pretty impressive names on that list, including Sal Bando. Hubie Brooks played third base for the Mets, was very popular in New York Mets. Gary Gentry, who played for the 1969 Miracle Mets on the same team with the recently departed and dearly beloved Tom Seaver. Now that's Duffy Dyer looking quite fierce, isn't he? Duffy Dyer, also played for the Mets. I'm sensing a theme here. Now we have, Bob Horner in a Atlanta Braves uniform. And I just get the giggles thinking of him taking dance and agility class from Margaret Giselo. Here we have Rick Monday in his Cubs uniform. And the inimitable Lenny Randle, who also was a very popular New York Mets and is a free spirit and kind of a word salad guy, because if you can figure out what he's trying to tell me about his dance and agility professor here, I would appreciate it. I think he said that Margaret taught him Arthur Ashe style tennis and that he really appreciated her influence upon his style and approach to playing baseball, I think. And here, of course, her most prominent protege, Reggie Jackson, Mr. October. Now, I am not saying that Margaret Giselo is the reason Reggie hit 3 home runs in successive at-bats against 3 different Dodgers pitchers during the 1977 World Series, but it's a pretty sure thing her influence made a difference in his overall approach to hitting and playing, and probably life, because that's how women roll. We know that's how women roll. We share, we inspire, we change things for the better. And that's the line of continuation that extends all the way from Maud to Margaret, to Mr. October, to Monet Davis, and succeeding generations of players that include some we don't even know about yet. That line is what makes a very solid case for Maud's legitimacy as a candidate for induction into the Hall of Fame in 2022. And there's Maud again. So please think about her during the coming months. We have more than a year now to get her into a position where people know about her and truly believe that she deserves a shot at induction. So talk about her, talk her up to your friends and circles of colleagues and acquaintances, and believe in her worthiness as a candidate for induction, because she deserves and has earned that faith. And I think Effa would most definitely approve. This is Effa's grave marker at Holy Cross Cemetery in Los Angeles, which I left a little present for her when I visited a few years ago, an IWBC pen. So thank you, Effa. And I also think my twin sister, Warren, on the right in this picture next to Harry Wendelstedt, would approve. She was my first steady umpiring partner when no one else would work with me. Cue that recurring theme music. No one would work with me because I was a woman. So thank you for allowing me to sneak in a mention of my sister Warren, who I always like to honor and appreciate, because if not for her unswerving support and unhesitating answer to my plea for a partner when I had none, I might have quit umpiring before I even got started. That's what makes this conference so meaningful to me, and why I'm so grateful for the opportunity to talk about Maud and about Dorothy Mills, and to learn about the other outstanding women whom previous presenters have educated us about. And there have been way more of them than I would have believed possible. So thank you, IWBC, SABR, and Rockford University for pulling all of this together so beautifully and offering all of us here at this conference the safe space that so many of us crave and have prayed for, a space where we can be unflinchingly honest and authentic, there's that word, in ways that baseball will only benefit from by paying attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Perry. Sisterhood is powerful, isn't it? And
United
I think we found a lot of sisters here.
There is power in unity, yes, power in numbers. For a long time, I felt so alone, and now I don't feel alone anymore. And that is just the best feeling in the world. And I want Effa to have that feeling too.
Yes, she doesn't need to be alone. And
right.
Maybe someday we'll see a women's wing in Cooperstown.
Well, we have that wonderful exhibit, the Diamond Dreams exhibit, which takes up a great deal of space on the second floor. But you're right, there's always more that better, more expansive ways to shine a light on women's contributions to baseball, definitely.
I'm looking here at the chat for questions. Please put your questions for Perry in the chat. Looks like we're going to share information about supporting Maud's nomination. How did you get interested in Maud?
It was kind of a process. Her name came up in reading that I was doing, and Leslie has done some great research on her, and another brilliant author, Barber Grigorich, and a ball player that I know named Irina Kovic. They have all done wonderful research. Deborah Shattuck and Gay Berlage. They all did the legwork, and her name just kept cropping up and kind of snagged my attention. And I really started thinking about her seriously a couple of years ago. And the more I learned about her, the more I became convinced that she really does deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. And not just because she's a woman, but because she meets all of the criteria that this particular committee, the Golden Days Committee, uses as guidelines for considering candidates who are eligible for induction. But it's that initial process of getting her onto that list of 10 eligible candidates that's going to be the first sticking point. That's the committee. It's called the Historical Overview Committee, and it's kind of a secret. I don't even know who's on it, but the way to reach them is just to get Maud's name plastered all over the internet and, magazines and newspapers, like I said. So whatever anybody here can and is willing to do to help accomplish that, you will be doing a mitzvah, not just for women, but for the Hall of Fame and all of baseball, because Maud is so deserving. And I know she's up against some tough competition, including Gil Hodges, because unfortunately for this vote, they're combining two different eras, which cuts down each candidate's chances in half, essentially. And SABR has also just named their most overlooked 19th century player that they're going to be promoting for inclusion on that list. So the competition is going to be very, very tough. But like I said, I think Maud has as good a shot as anybody at least being considered for that list of 10.
Well, thank you, Perry. You'll enjoy the comments in the chat and the support that you'll find there.
Great. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. We're going to move to our second speaker, who is Callie Maddox. Callie is an assistant professor in the Department of Sport Leadership and Management at Miami University in Ohio, where she teaches classes on the critical socio-cultural story of sport. Her research interests include women's baseball, the globalization of sport, and American yoga culture. We're going to move over to you now, Callie.
Great. Thanks, Marlene.
There you are. Yeah,
Great.
Welcome.
Hi,
Thanks for
everyone.
joining us.
Let me share my screen. Okay. And go here. How's that? Great.
Good.
Thank you all for having me here. I'm absolutely thrilled to be a part of these conference proceedings. It's an amazing group of human beings here, and I'm just delighted to be a part of it.
You'll watch this, you'll like it.
And today, this afternoon, I'd like to share with you all a little bit of research that's new for me. And it's about the depiction of women in cartoons that appeared in the magazine Baseball Digest. Now, this is a little bit new for me. This is not normally kind of my area, looking at these types of cultural texts. But I chose to do this because I noticed earlier this year, of course, we saw that Rachel Balkovec and Alyssa Mackin were featured on the cover of Baseball Digest. And this was incredible. This was a huge deal, right? The first time that women in uniform had been pictured on the cover of Baseball Digest. And this spurred in me. I thought, this is fantastic. You know, this is a positive step forward. What was it like in the past? Had Baseball Digest covered women at all in its previous iterations? This is the longest running baseball magazine in the United States, first published in 1942. And so it made me curious. I had read Baseball Digest as a kid, just as a fan. So I kind of clicked back into my childhood memories, and Baseball Digest during the lockdown of the pandemic made its archives available for free to the public. And so I thought, oh, let's check this out. And it was absolutely fascinating what I kind of found. And I really approached this with the idea that the texts that are included within magazines are important cultural windows. So these are not just innocent, fun little cartoons or throwaway articles or really cool photographs. They say something important about our cultural moment, our cultural beliefs at that time. So we can learn a lot through these cultural texts. Now, this was part of a larger project that I was really looking at, and my research question was really broad, sort of looking like, well, how are women depicted in general? Were women writing any articles for Baseball Digest in the 40s or the 50s? Were they covering any kind of women's games or involvement? Was there anything beyond just coverage of men in baseball? And so I set up a content analysis, and I went through every single issue. I'm still working on it. It's taking a long time, but what I have here to present for you today is I looked at 387 issues from 1942 through 1978. And what really popped up to me were these cartoons. And these are largely editorial cartoons that were published elsewhere. So Baseball Digest in its early days pulled material from other sources. So from the New Yorker, from the Chicago Tribune, from the LA Times, and really kind of collated all of these with a little bit of original content as well too. But certainly the cartoons were coming from elsewhere. And these cartoons were very prevalent in really the earlier issues. And I looked at these and I came up with these 5 categories. And so I'm going to work through these categories and really just showcase what these cartoons were trying to elicit, which was certainly humor. But if we look beyond and go a bit deeper, a broader and a not such a superficial read, we can see that there's some definite cultural messaging happening in these cartoons. So we can't just ignore it. We can't just throw it away and say, well, that was funny. No, these are speaking to very distinct cultural belief systems around women, around their involvement in the game of baseball. So first up, let's go to my category that I called Clueless. This is perhaps the most dominant framing of women in baseball in these editorial cartoons. And this is the sense, that very stereotypical sense that women have no idea what baseball is about. Maybe they're fans, but they don't really know what's going on. They have no knowledge of the nuances of the game. They're just kind of clueless, right? Baseball is a men's game. Why are the women even interested? So we see here in these 2 cartoons, I don't know if you can read that, but the caption for the first one from May 1944, that batter must be awfully particular. The umpire is dusting off the plate for him. So not even understanding the intricacies and sort of those rituals of the game. This one from November, well, he's not winning much, right? But I cured him of that nasty habit of putting spit on the ball. So this sense that the women don't really know what's going on. And this is a stereotypical trope that is still with us, unfortunately, that women as baseball fans still have to fight against. I hope a foul ball comes this way so I can try out my hat. Maybe not a good idea. And this one from October, the woman expressing to her perhaps a husband or a male companion there, isn't that pitcher wonderful? 14 runs off him in 3 innings, and still they can't knock him out. So again, an assumption of ignorance, an assumption that women really don't understand the rules or what the game is about. And this one here, finally, here from June 1952. I can't imagine why you'd want a pocket in your new glove, dear, but I made one for you. So not questioning, not understanding. And the second category is what I term sexualization This is perhaps not surprising, and in this sort of time period in the 40s and ranging here into the mid 50s, the sexualization of women in general. And looking here specifically in the depiction, both in the illustrations and the words that are used in these cartoons that sexualize the depiction of these ball players. So in these cartoons, I read it as a reference to the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League, and this is after its existence. But certainly the name of the teams, the Bees and the Amazons, the coach, the player wearing shorts. Looking in the second one from September, the depiction of the women in the background who are throwing their gloves at the wall as sort of mannish, right? And having that masculine character, which again is a stereotype of women baseball players that still, again, is with us today, against women athletes in general too, right? That if you are involved in sport as a woman, you're more manly. You have these masculine characteristics. So comparing the background framing there to the woman up front, it was highly sexualized in the illustration. The large breasts, the hips, the long legs. And so tied in then with the captions, you have the cutest strike zone and the coach, right, coming say, hey, how about you come up to my place and console me? We lost a tough game, that was rough, come console me. So an overt sexualization depicted here. Oh, sorry, lost my mouse there. This one here too, from 1952, I found incredibly odd. I'm not quite sure how to read this one. Depiction, a nudist colony, married women versus single women, and these two men being peeping toms, saying we want to consume these women's bodies. They're playing baseball, we're assuming behind this fence, in the nude, and the men here peeping and wanting to know what is going on, sexualizing, consuming the female body. And here from 1955, and again here a sexualized depiction of a female ball player, and then linked here with this then assumption or accusation that these other players are making. Look, you know what? The sports writers picked a 250 hitter as the league's most valuable player, as the MVP, right? And they're saying, no, there was more to it, of course. Okay. So this based on look at the looks on the fans' faces, the spectators' faces, the ogling, the consumption of the female body, the male gaze that is following this female body, and the rewards given to the idealized, sexualized, objectified female body in this context. Then here too, the distraction that the third base coach is providing there, allowing the team to steal third, and the female body as a distracting force for that male gaze. Now, a third category that I termed umpires, there was quite an interesting prevalence of the role of the umpire, linked very closely to sexualization, and the way that the umpire as a male authority figure really emphasizes the sexualization and the consumption of these female ball players' bodies. So most of these are very interesting, kind of come a bit later, sort of in the 50s, the early to mid 50s. But here we see something here, right? Watch that second base umpire, he pinches. Or here too, the male authority figure of the umpire making kind of this threat of saying, hey, I just asked for your phone number. Right? You better think this over because my calls are not going to go your way. So thinking through here, what does this mean? There's a deeper meaning here. Right? This is not just meant to be humorous. There is something else being said here. And in my reading, it's very much about male authority. And here the umpires chatting here before, again, sort of an assumed, game of women's league, a women's baseball game here, and saying, no, you know what, these women, you're going to tear your hair out, right? You ain't got no hair to pull, Joe. You better umpire because this is going to be rough. It's going to drive me crazy. The assumption then that this is not going to be high quality baseball, that the women don't know how to play, and it's not going to be enjoyable for the umpires. This one blew my mind This was a cartoon that originally appeared in the New Yorker magazine in 1951. And Depiction, all right, the pitcher's getting taken out, and the umpire is standing there fantasizing about her in the shower. Again, overt sexualization, overt consumption, objectification of this female body. And then finally here, the umpire standing in the wrong place. He's ogling. He's using his male gaze. And here to femininity. And again, I certainly see connections between all these themes and these categories. And I pulled these out because they're a little bit more overt in addressing the dominant norms of femininity that were very prevalent in the 40s and the 50s, and the presentation and the assumptions of what feminine means and how women should be presenting themselves. So here in 1945, one of those gals teams played here last night. Now, first base is decorated with a fancy bow. Right? This assumption that to be feminine is to buy into sort of this, decorative types of frilly things, bows and what is that, like lacy kind of stuff. That they marked their space with a very feminine marker of that, stereotypical marker of femininity. And here, the discussion about sliding in the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League earlier, right? So this one about slide in these tiny little shorts, right? We know that those women were tough and highly skilled and excellent athletes, and yeah, they slid, and they paid the price with physical injury. But this idea that, no, you can't possibly maintain your femininity and be aggressive and steal bases and slide into base and get hurt and get scraped up. That's not the proper feminine thing to do. So again, supporting these dominant narratives of what it means to be a proper woman. And certainly if you're seen playing baseball and sliding and getting dirty, you're not upholding those proper feminine ideals. And then here too with the mink stole, which made me laugh. I laughed at this one, but yeah, like this sort of display of femininity. You're not calling for your jacket, you're calling for your mink stole. I want to be out here, I'm playing baseball, but how do I then emphasize this very generalized and stereotypical and dominant notion of femininity in and through your choice of how to keep warm? And so then finally, I titled this last category respect, and I might need to put a question mark on the end of it. And my conception here was that there were a few, not many, cartoons that actually promoted this underlying message of, well, yeah, women are interested in the game, women play the game, we should respect that. So there were a few examples of this symbolized in and through these editorial cartoons. This was one that I really liked from 1947 of a woman at a fancy dinner party, pulling off her best impression of Eddie Stanky stealing second base. And here she is, in her fancy party dress and her high heels, going for it. So I really like this one. Okay, all right, women can do this. Women can watch the game. Women do understand it. Women are genuine, true fans. And they can enact this type of physicality. Here are two others. These are the only three that I really found here. 1944. If you can't read that, it says, "Gad, what a first baseman she'd make for the Yankees." So this very feminized space of the bridal party, this wedding, right, and the bride throwing her bouquet. And these two male observers, like, oh, she's got some skills, right? That looks all right. She could play. She could play. And then this last one here from 1944, Ladies' Day. Ladies can get free entry into the ballpark. And I love it that these women show up and they're like, wait, we want to play. Right? We don't want to just watch, we want to play. And perhaps I give this a more generous reading than I should, but I read this one as saying, yes, women do play. they were involved in the game. They wanted to play ball. They wanted spaces where they could come and play ball. Were they fans? Sure, they wanted to come and watch, but they wanted to claim a space to also participate in the game and play this game of baseball that they obviously enjoyed and loved as well too. So perhaps a generous reading on that one, but this was my favorite one out of the bunch that I found. Now, future directions here. I have some more issues to look through. I do want to link the narratives of these editorial cartoons to broader ideas about communication and communicative texts that speak to our cultural belief systems. And then also link these to the other articles that appeared in Baseball Digest that were about women or written by women, and also the photographs that appeared in Baseball Digest that depicted women in the game as well too. And taking this, that full span from 1942 up through now 2020 to get a very full picture of what Baseball Digest meant and what it really produced for consumers to learn about women's role in the game. So that's it for now. Happy to take some questions.
Thank you very much, Callie. There's been some interest in your sharing your slide deck.
Sure thing, sure.
Great.
And folks just want to email me and I can pass it along, absolutely. They're great images.
And it will be interesting to listen to the rest of your work as you move forward through the rest of those pieces. Have you been looking at current day editorial cartoons? Have found many?
I have not. So that is the piece of the research that I need to get to. I kind of very regularly kind of coming back to those archives and looking through, and really they kind of stop. In Baseball Digest, they stop in, probably the early 60s, and they start to replicate. So it's really interesting. They pull these older editorial cartoons and publish them at a much later date. So I haven't found many new ones, but I do want to keep looking because I think it would be fascinating to see a more contemporary read with these.
Kate asks if Baseball Digest archives are still free or has their temporary access been revoked?
It has been revoked. You do have to pay for them now. I think it was a 3-month free access. And I was like, kicking my own self in the butt, going, I gotta hurry, I gotta get through this. But I just ended up paying for it. And it's actually a good deal because you get, if you pay for it, you get access to the archives, but you also get the print issues of the magazine as well too.
Great. Tara asks, why did you limit your research to pre-1978? Wondering with women's movements if there were more of the last type of cartoons in the past 30 years.
Yes, and that is a function of time right now. That's a good question. I just haven't gotten beyond 1978 yet. Each year is about 12 issues, 10 to 12 issues. So to go through and capture everything and also look at the articles that are being written, and I'm looking also at letters to the editor or fan letters that are written in to the magazine that are written by women. So I have a lot to capture. So it's just a time issue right now.
And there's an interesting comment from Cecilia about wanting to see a comparison of these cartoons with the ones published around the same time in other publications like the New Yorker and Playboy.
That's a great idea. That's a really good Playboy. That's a great idea. Yeah, Cecilia, that's an amazing idea. And I think, once I get this written up, I would love to expand to look into other publications because I think it could be really fascinating.
I didn't notice, but were all of the cartoonists men?
Yeah.
There's a question. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And I do want to do some research on the individual cartoonists as well too. There was a man named Jeff Peet who did the very sexualized cartoons with the Amazons and the bees. So I want to do some digging into him and see his other work as well too.
And here's a question from Will. What was the reaction in cartoons and other media when the All-American Girls League was launched? Did you find anything?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And I was actually shocked at the silence of Baseball Digest. I thought for sure, like I had it marked. I was okay, 1943 to 1954, certainly there's going to be stuff in Baseball Digest. There was nothing, absolutely nothing. It was shocking to me, sort of beyond those cartoons that vaguely reference The league, there was no direct mention of the league being launched, its activities, its success, nothing.
Annika Oruk, who's done a lot of work in this area and is a fine artist and cartoonist, I guess I'll say herself, she says that there was a lot of gee whiz kind of patting on the head, patronizing media and cartoons around the league when she was looking at it.
Interesting. Yeah, Annika, I would love to know what you think about all of this and what you found, because it's not, it's kind of like the art side is not my expertise in the illustration side, but yeah, I can imagine.
Annika, we could put you on the spot quick and unmute you if you have a quick comment.
Oh, hello.
Hi, Annika.
Hi, that was awesome. Sorry, I suddenly, being put on the spot made my fingers
Sorry.
stop working. That was awesome. And now I've really been looking forward to this because that was kind of a, here, wait, sorry. That was kind of a, in my research for the book, I wasn't looking for cartoon stuff necessarily in the beginning, but kind of couldn't help but come across some of it. And then when I was doing visual research, but you found some really great stuff that I'd never seen. And that when you started categorizing them, I was like, oh my God, yes. And I had bookmarked all of these cartoons that I found, just not really knowing what to do with them, but just being kind of like, oh my God, right. Found one that was like, I find if you wave them in with pantyhose, they know which direction to run. And there's a guy doing a stocking to try to get the girl to run into the base, which makes no sense anyway. It's like, wow, what's so attractive about anyway, but it was really fun to see what you'd come across. And I love that you're not coming at it from a cartoonist perspective, or, that you're coming from your point of research that you're coming from, because I'm such a cartoon nerd and I love like the old New Yorker cartoons and stuff, and some of the old Playboy cartoons are some of my favorite artists, but then you come across this kind of stuff and I feel so conflicted. It's like, I love a lot of this stuff, but this is like incredible. So yeah, good stuff. That was really enjoyable. Thank you.
Thank you. I have to say, I did not go in, like the cartoons completely surprised me. Took me by surprise. I was going through all these like, oh my gosh, there's another one. Oh, I got to get this one. I was really looking for the written articles. That's what I was going in looking for. And so I was completely taken aback by these cartoons. Was not expecting this at all.
That's one of the most
interesting
about cartoon is that there's a lot of, this is a weird way to say it, but a lot of bang for your buck. There's so much social commentary and context and cultural context and political context. Like you can find so much about an era and what's happening in any sort of world by just looking at the cartoons of the time, which is kind of like, I think it's often dismissed. So that's why I was really excited about this, because I think that's a real pertinent way of looking at things, pertinent topic.
Absolutely. I mean, you're absolutely right in saying that this is dismissed and that we just read it as, oh, that was funny, and that's haha. And then we go on, but we need to stop and realize how much more these cartoons are saying in such a compact little form.
Absolutely.
There's some related comments about that in the chat. Ellen is asking, thank you, Annika. If you control for sexist portrayals of women in baseball, comparing overall levels of sexism in the cartoons in the era as a whole?
Oh, that's a great question. No, not yet. Because again, this took me by surprise and this was sort of not what I was going in looking for. So I haven't set any kind of control or looked at any other examples in that era yet, but that's also an excellent idea as well too, and something that I would like to expand upon. Other sports as well too. I would love to sort of look like, well, how were women basketball players being portrayed at this time? Other types of sporting activities.
Yeah, be sure to take a look at the chat.
Will do. Yeah,
Callie, because there's some interesting comments. And I'm gonna let me see, we got a couple more coming in here. Mark is saying, as a lover of 1940s era cinema, this is how women are often depicted in film. There are great exceptions, but not a lot of meek, not bright sidekicks getting rescued. And then from Allie, did you analyze through both a gender and race lens? The images are gendered, and how are they racialized?
Yeah,
Great question.
yeah, Allie, that's a wonderful
more to
question.
do.
Yeah, as well too, right? Yeah, it's all white women, and in the cartoons with men, it is, I would say, probably 95% white men as well too. And I was trying to recall. I do remember seeing one cartoon with a black baseball player, and it was not kind. It was very racist, and I can't remember what year it was. But certainly for the women, all white women, no question.
Tara comments that women basketball players may have still been playing under the weird women's rules at the time.
Yeah.
This was another fascinating presentation. Thank you so much. And we look forward to hearing about what else you've done with it next time we get together.
You bet. I'll keep you all posted.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
So we're right back on track, if not a little bit early. Our next speaker is Luisa Gauci, who's currently playing second base on the men's baseball team at West Los Angeles College, where she is one of 4, I think Elizabeth Ben said yesterday, 4 women playing on men's teams. She's from Brisbane, Australia, where she played for the Queensland Bandits before being recruited to play baseball in the United States. She's going to talk about her work comparing the physical characteristics of elite athletes and her work to develop a scouting scorecard that's more accurate for scouting women. Luisa, are you ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Sorry, we're a little bit early.
No, that's fine.
We're going.
Okay.
Thank you again for joining us.
No problem. Today's my day off, so I've got time today.
You're not in the gym.
No, not today. So hi everyone, my name is Luisa Gauci. I'm from Australia, but I'm currently in Los Angeles right now. I'm training full time. I got this amazing opportunity to play college baseball at West LA. So for me, this topic is important just to allow other opportunities for girls wanting to follow my path as a baseball player to play at the next level in college. And yeah, I'm here to present some of my work where I created a more accurate scouting scale, and that's more universal and that's more specific to women. So let me just share my screen. So I will begin now. So the purpose of the study was pretty much to evaluate the major physical disparities and boundaries between the elite male and female baseball players, and to explore if females will have the ability to able to contest against the men with a comparison against the scouting scale used by scouts when they're going around trying to pick up players. So the women's scouting scale that I've created is based on public data that's available from the 2018 Women's Baseball World Cup, as well as the independent teams I've come across around the world. The data that was collated was then assessed against the original 20 to 80 used by an undisclosed Major League Baseball organization, where most prospects will hover around the 50 mark, which indicates the average grade of tools possessed to be a current MLB player. So what is the 2080 scouting scale? The invention of the numerical system was credited to Branch Rickey, and the scale mirrors various scientific scales. So 50 is the major league average, and then every 10-point increment represents a standard deviation better or worse than the average. It's a normal distribution with 3 standard deviations in either direction, and it should include 99.7% of the sample, so that's why the scale is 20 to 80 rather than 0 to 100. So here is the original scouting scale. This is what's used currently for MLB when they're recruiting, or for minor leagues as well. Just take like a look at the fastball velo is between 86 to 97, where 86 is like not even a prospect at all, but 97 is the best they can do. And the major league average to be a prospect will be 50, so that's around 90 to 91 miles per hour. Even looking at the homers, it's 40 plus to be the best, and to be average, it's 15 to 18 a season. So that's pretty much the main things, as well as the 60-yard run and the first home to plate. It's pretty, to be like, to the women, it's pretty unrealistic to kind of reach some of these metrics. So what I've done is I'm using Team Australian metrics from the 2018 Women's Baseball World Cup as an example. So how I got this data was that I got it off the website for the Women's World Cup, and I averaged it all out. So the average fastball velocity for the Australian team was 67.8, so around 68 miles per hour. The batting average was around 0.307. The home to first was around 6 seconds, and 60-yard 8 seconds, and isolated power was 0.135. I'm using isolated power instead of home runs just because in the Women's World Cup we don't really see as many home runs as we would in the men's game. So instead we used isolated power, which is just a measure of a hitter's raw power and tells you how often a player hits for extra bases. So as we can see here, I've just put the comparison between the men's table here and where we're going to put it into with the data on the right. So we're going to associate the averages from the Women's World Cup to the original scouting scale. And we can see through the eyes of a scout or a coach looking to recruit a female baseball player, what they actually see. So this is what they're going to see. They're going to see someone who is well below any standards, and they probably will not see a game because 20 is meaning they're not a prospect at all. So if we remember, 50 is going to be someone that's looking to be like, that's a top prospect. The only thing that's kind of like an outlier would be the batting average, which is at 70. But that's because like the batting average is a bit more like it's more like wishy-washy, I guess, because the women aren't like throwing as hard, and the batting average, yeah, it's kind of like an outlier there. So the 2080 scouting scale that I have created is as follows. So we can just really see from the fastball velo, the top is at 83, and then the average to be a prospect would be 62 to 64, which is more realistic to the women. As well with stolen bases and 60-yard times, this is kind of where we see for women to try be recruited. Yeah, so all this data was based on the Women's World Cup, and it was based on data that I had collected over time between other countries. So this is kind of like what we need to be able to see to have a more transparent plan for women to be recruited. So the key changes to the scouting scale was obviously velocity and speed, and then isolated power, which has been used instead of home runs. So with the new 2080 grading scale with the women's metrics, we can see that the Australian team is actually quite good, and they want to like have some really good top prospects in their team. And this is what a scout would see to go watch the game, and they would have value in seeing the game. So if we can see a scale comparison, again, noting that the 50 mark indicates the average grade of tools possessed. So compared to the men's scale, a scout wouldn't go watch. But compared to the women's scale, we can see that a scout would want to watch, and there are a lot of prospects on the team. So what is not included and needs further data is left-hand batter to second base or to first base, the across the diamond velocity, and exit velocity of the bat. So why it should be used. So if scouts and coaches were able to use the scale when identifying female players for upcoming showcases or tournaments that are male dominated, we would be able to identify more female prospects to build up and support to complete adjacent to men. As development and skill increases, the scale can easily be adapted, and hopefully one day it can scale or mirror the same as the men's. But for now, this is where we're at based on data that's collected quite recently. If this scale can be used universally in women's baseball, then we would be able to track the quality of prospects over time, just like it's used in men's baseball. This would eliminate the guessing game that coaches face when recruiting female baseball players. Why it to be used continued. So girls can see where they compare with girls in other countries to help motivate and build achievable goals for their progress. There'll be girls that be able to break the barrier and be on the men's scale. However, majority will struggle. Having this information, we'll be then able to create area-specific programs where women lack, in turn producing more prospects. So in time where women's baseball continues to grow and where the inclusion of women's baseball leagues global, this is a better time than any to begin the process of identifying female prospects in an effective and universal way that is easily accessible to all. So the reasoning behind the creation of the scouting scale was the lack of transparency that I experienced as a female baseball player. At trials, I never really knew what I was competing with, and like locally or internationally, I always felt like I was in the dark. So I didn't know how to realistically improve when I was constantly compared to the men's scale and forced to meet sometimes impossible standards. With this new scouting scale, we can clearly put both men and women on a level playing field for identification. So that's kind of that's kind of like how I came up with this idea, just because as a female baseball player, knowing that I was constantly never good enough, but I knew I was, and trying to prove to people that I should be on a team, or why like I am training the way I am, or like why like I'm not taking up a roster spot for another boy. Yeah, I really struggled with that, like mentally. So just having this for me, I'm like, okay, good. I'm not terrible. So I really think that for other girls to have this would be like super amazing, especially if it's universal, because again, like at trials, I would never understand how women's baseball coaches, like for the teams and stuff, would scale, because they didn't have anything, or they would all have separate things. They'd be going to around 3 or 4 trials, and they would all be looking for something different, and you would never know where you compete. So like with men, they have the one scale that everyone uses. So that's kind of like what I think that we need to be able to be seeing in women's baseball as well.
I think our group thinks so too. You'll be very happy to look at the comments. Starting with Cecilia, who says the best pitcher she ever faced was in women's baseball was from Australia.
Awesome.
So, you know, SABR looks at metrics all the time. So you've got a lot of support from the SABR side of folks. Quantifying women's skills is important to our progress in baseball. Let's see. Leslie asked if you've shared this with any national teams yet, and if so, what's their reaction been?
So the only kind of people I've been talking to is obviously like Team Australia, because I know the coaches there. And like they like the idea, and I've kind of like proposed it to them, but for them to like actually use it, I guess, is another thing. Where I'm gonna start using it is back in Australia, like back where I live in Brisbane. We have like our Queensland team, which is the team that competes at the national tournament, and I'm gonna give that to the head coach so he can give it a go. So it's kind of like my guinea pig test run to see how we go. But again, like I'm missing a lot of data that we don't actually have, because with women's baseball, we only started collecting data, I would say, in the past 12 months. So there's honestly like nothing. It's pretty crazy, especially in Australia. We're a bit behind with everything, and to get like all this technology and stuff, it's pretty hard. So definitely coming back again, I want to help everyone like back home to get to what they want. So
excellent. Justin asks if there's other metrics like OPD, strikeouts, etc., that you think should be included on the scale that currently aren't there.
The only kind of things that I want to see more is like I kind of put it in my presentation. I want to see like velocity across the diamond, because the velocity that I'm currently like talking about is, I guess, like off the mound and or like a crow hop into the fence, because it's kind of the same, I guess. Like, I'm not gonna say the same, but velocity is velocity. And if you see a girl that's throwing like 80 on a crow hop, or like 70 to 80 off a mound, like that's a really good prospect. And I would also like to see like exit velocity off the bat. Like the other metrics you can get from like gameplay and over time once you collect everything. But again, to have someone at games collecting women's data is pretty impossible. Like it only started happening at the World Cup in 2018, and then I'm pretty sure that this one's going to be postponed because of COVID. So it'll be like interesting to see how they do the data at the next World Cup.
There's a comment from Doran, who says it's a very interesting presentation. He thinks, though, that the right-handed runner to first base data may be a bit inaccurate. It's a ratio to 60-yard dash times. It's a bit off. He says the men's data is about 2/3 the time for running to first compared to the 60-yard dash. And he thinks the women's ratio would be more similar to the men.
So all the data that I collected, I didn't make up these numbers. It's all the data I collected from the Women's World Cup and from independent teams that gave it to me. So these numbers I didn't quite make up, but it's definitely something that I can look at in the future.
I'd love for you to share more of your baseball experience in Australia.
I loved it. I definitely didn't know anything different. So for us, kind of like the norm was to train, I'm gonna say like 2 to 3 times a week, and that would be like the elite team would be training 2 to 3 times a week, and I loved it because I was like, oh, I get to play 3 times a week. But then coming to America, I train 6 days a week, and I'm like, this is even better. So I guess like in Australia, I loved it at the time because I didn't know anything else, but definitely I think I liked the experience better in America of playing baseball than Australia. But there's a lot more girls in Australia that play, so that was probably like one of my favorite things, was getting to play with a lot of my friends all the time. And they're like my lifelong friends now. Yeah. And then coming back to LA, I have around two baseball friends that are girls. But yeah, in Australia I have like 30. So that's definitely something that's different.
You told me the story how you were recruited to play in the States. Could you share that with the rest of the conference?
Yeah, so I was coaching the men's under 18s like team to go to nationals for Queensland, and I was just like sitting on the bench, and the right fielder had gotten injured, and the head coach had asked me like, hey, did you bring your stuff today? And I'm like, of course I brought my stuff. So I just went to my car and I put on my jersey and I grabbed my bag. And he's like, yeah, like, did you want to play right field? And I was like, of course I do. So I went out and I played right field, and we were versing an American touring team at the time. So we were playing like a 4-game series. And this is one of the last games of the series. So I went out and I played right field. I played really well. I got a couple of hits off the guys. And then once the game was finished, the head coach for the American side like came over to me and he's like, do you play baseball? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, really? And I'm like, yeah. And then he's like, oh, did you want to come to like LA for the summer and train with us? And I'm like, yes. So I went and I trained with them for 2 to 3 months. And then it was like the second week I was there, he was like, did you want to stay here? And I'm like, yes. So that's kind of like my story of how I ended up playing. Definitely like, yeah, I was very prepared for everything. So I was prepared for that moment. And I succeeded, which is really good. So
always have your gear with you.
Exactly.
Cecilia mentions that Women's Team USA needs a lot of support. They get almost none compared to the men's team. It's far worse than the disparity in soccer. So, and she's mad about that, just as a comment.
Yeah.
And Meredith is asking about a scale like this, once further developed, as you said, How does that get adopted? Is it by national team, or is there an international organization that would adopt it? And thanks for your work with this.
It's honestly, it's about like going to every international team and being like, what, this is why you should be like using this, and for them to be able to like foster that and make it their own, because that's what's being done with the men's scouting scale. So every team has one of these, but everyone has something different. So it's about like getting it out there and telling them this is what we have, and them running with that. So it's pretty much just like going to, I guess, like the head coaches or like the governing body and be like, hey, you should try this out, see if it works for you. And then that's like where it builds off. They can either like take it, run with it, or like say no, they don't want it. You know, like that's kind of how it works.
Let's see. Where do you think the future of women's baseball is? Where is it going?
Where is it going? I think it's going great. I think it's going to be really awesome, especially now since there's a lot more leagues coming up, and especially the amount of support that women in baseball are getting right now. So I just think like continuing to do events like this and continuing to like talk to people about it, it's going to become more the norm. And that's when people like are wanting to like more invest in the game, I guess. But especially like with Baseball for All and like the Canadian Girls League, there's so many girls coming up. It's going to be amazing. Like we've never had this before, so we don't know, but it's going to be great.
That's wonderful to hear, and you've got all the support from everyone here.
Yeah.
Tell us what's next for you.
So I actually just got a job on Monday with Driveline as the hitting analyst in gym. So Driveline is up in Seattle, and it's like one of the leading, the world's leading like technology-based baseball performance centers. So I'm going up there tomorrow actually, and I'm working there until school starts here. So I just told my coach, I'm like, well, because in California, there's no college right now. It's all online, and there's no baseball right now because of COVID. So I'm going to take this opportunity to, you know, have my dream job at 19 and do that and train full time up there. So I'm super excited because my hitting coach is actually one of the Driveline trainers, and finally I get to like meet him in person, and he can finally like teach me everything in person rather than over the phone. So it's going to be super amazing, and I'm really excited.
Excellent. And you know, Luisa, there's quite a few SABR members on this conference that are up in the Pacific Northwest, and I would be remiss if I didn't offer their support to you. If you want to post your email, Mark, maybe you guys and some of the rest of you folks, Emily, I think you're on the call in the Seattle area. You could stay in touch and welcome you, help you feel at home.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Are there any more, and Cecilia does mention you're going to be able to influence Driveline's culture as well.
Oh, no, 100%. I have so many research things I'm doing for them. I started in March for them. So I've been working with them like since March. And then that's kind of like what influenced them to like give me the job in the interview, because it's kind of like, hey, I've done all this for you, and like I have like 6 months until school starts, so I've got time, and I play baseball, and I want to train full time. And they're like, oh my gosh, okay. So I was like, I'm really excited. I definitely have like so many ideas to like, so kind of the guy that's like my research partner, we've kind of like discussed this. It's kind of like, hey, you ready to like take over like the world of like baseball research? Because I have so many ideas for like women's collection, and I'm sure I can like squeeze in like a couple of like girls baseball clinics while I'm there that I can influence them to like get done. So I'm really excited to just get as much as I can over there, and then come back here and then keep playing with college baseball, and then like go from there. So yeah.
This is great. Thank you so much for your time. Is there anyone else have questions? We're good. Luisa, do you mind if we share your email in chat?
Oh yeah, Yeah, I can write it in
Will
now.
you do that for us? That would be great. And
yeah.
Seattle Saber, I know you'll welcome her.
Thank you, everybody.
We've got a few minutes before our next presentation starts. I'm wondering if we might just take like a 5-minute break.
Yep. That's what I was going to suggest, Marlene. Let's
Okay.
just take the full 10 minutes and come
Okay,
back
good.
at
We'll
2:30.
see you back here at 11:30, 1:30.
2:30 for us.
2:30.
2:30, 1:30,
Okay.
and 11:30.
All right, great. See you in 10 minutes. Thanks.
How you doing, Kathy?
I'm good. I just figured out how to, that I can actually work on this computer while I'm doing it.
Oh, well, now that you only have 30 minutes left, I'm glad you figured that out.
Both students had to cancel, so it's just me.
Oh.
So I'm like, well, it's all good that it's just me. So
that's
I just came to my office and did some work. I'm doing.
Good for you. Good for you. Well,
order yourself a nice dinner on us.
Yeah, there you go.
Actually,
and Kathy, can you make Jennifer's iPhone a co-host? I don't think she has anything. I don't know that she needs. Okay.
I did it once, maybe. Oh, maybe she came out because
Okay.
I did actually. Yeah, but thank you for that because I was like, oh yes, now she has it. You're good.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
I'm sorry.
Hey, Jen.
Hi.
It's good to see you.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good to see you. Hi, Kat.
Hi. Sorry, I can't give you a big hug.
Oh, big hugs.
Hi, Jen.
Hi. Oh, hi, Leslie. Big hugs. Hi. It's so good to see. I love your background.
Oh, thanks.
I absolutely love your background.
Figured
this is
I
our
need.
new logo.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Allie Crandall created it. So
Very nice.
Very cool.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for putting this on, and thank you for letting us be a part of it.
Oh, we're excited.
Yeah, we're excited to hear from you and just see your face. It's been a while.
Thank you. Yeah, this is my first public appearance in weeks, actually.
Yeah. So you're feeling better?
I am. Thank you. And really, honestly, thank goodness for women. And I'm not supposed to say it. Carrie hates when I say it. But, they saved my life through this, literally saved my life. And that we'll go into on a different forum. But it is amazing how valuable a team of strong women. I just never before realized how imperative it is. There was no way forward without the women in my life.
That's a nice lesson to learn, isn't it?
It was incredible. And Perry hates it. She's like, don't call me a legend and stop saying I saved your life. But she did. So many times she helped me with the sound bites and the skill set, you know, like I had to learn life skills on the go. You know, I was really thrown to the wolves in a lot of ways. And she was incredible. And Kat, you were as well. You know, I remember our first conversation. Thank you. You've been a mentor to me, and Leslie, everything for, you know, that you guys have done. You guys kept me going because you were my friends, and it was such a good feeling, you know.
Thank you for saying that. Well, I've been worried about you physically more than anything. So.
Oh yeah, there was a lot of physical, mental, emotional. Really, it just kind of all comes in, especially with what we're all facing. It really, but it was a beautiful opportunity because those who stood with me, and Fernando Arroyo showed up on my doorstep and knocked on the door, and I was like, oh, what is going on? He's like, don't you give up. You know,
that's awesome. That's awesome. Good for good. So this
is surreal.
We're going to invite Perry to join us at one point, and also Marianne and Melissa, if they're here, to just say hello later on in our conversation.
Thank you. We have a team of 5. So it will be Perry, and then Melissa Mayu right below her, and then Ali Crandall and Marianne Costello are helping me with the day-to-day, and then Kat Ree is also a big part of this.
Great.
You don't need to make everyone a co-host, right?
No, they can just unmute.
No, they can just unmute.
Excellent. So we have 2 minutes, 1 minute.
Yep, we got 1
minute. And then Leslie, you have raffle winners.
Yeah, we got a bunch of things to do right at 3 o'clock. We have raffle winners, but we also have another surprise to show everybody at 3 o'clock. So stick around.
Another surprise.
We love surprises.
Almost for a second there, Kat, I thought, wait, are you wearing the shirt? Because it's
I'm hiding. I'm hiding.
I'm like, don't give it away. Right. All right, I'm going to turn it over.
We're all just a little bit giddy.
You tell? Yeah. All right. I'm going to turn my stuff off here because it's just about time.
Are we all back? We're almost back.
Almost back, I'd give it, yeah.
Do you want me to stay, should I go mute while
go mute and go stop your video till we bring you in.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, great.
All right.
Well, welcome back. Welcome to our last conversation of this wonderful women's conference. I know I've enjoyed everything and learned so much and feel very much empowered by all of the things that all of you are doing and sharing. So thanks everyone. Thanks to SABR and the IWBC and everyone who made this possible. So our final discussion this afternoon will be a conversation with Jen Madison and friends about the Association of Professional Baseball Players. Jennifer Madison. Let's see, where are you, Jennifer?
Hi.
Are you here?
I am here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you and I can see you. That's great.
Okay.
So Jen has been a successful business technology and marketing coach, an event planner, fundraiser, public speaker, podcast host, and advocate for those who need a voice. She's currently the first female president of the Association of Professional Baseball Players, which is a nonprofit formed in 1924 by Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. Welcome, Jennifer. So
thank you for having us.
Would you tell us a bit more about the association? It's been around for almost 100 years, and I don't know very much about it.
Absolutely, we are happy to. So the Association of Professional Ball Players was formed in 1924 when Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig and 10 other ball players saw a need to create a brotherhood and a family. There was a minor league player who was down and out, and they realized that they really had to unite and form together and make sure that nobody fell through the cracks in any fashion. Since then, we have grown to 101,800 members, and we have helped over 3,800 members of the baseball family. And our current board is Tony La Russa, Dusty Baker, Fred Clare, Tom Gamboa, Brooks Robinson, Mike Sosha, Cameron Lowe, and Howie Bedell.
That's a very impressive group of people. Who
Thank
can
you.
be a member of the organization?
Well, anybody can join onto our mission, and we love that. There are different tiers. So our members consist of anyone who has been employed in professional baseball, and that includes the baseball players and the coaches and managers and umpires and scouts and trainers, clubhouse personnel. So anybody employed in professional baseball is welcome to be a regular member of the association. And then we also have honorary memberships per our bylaws. In the past, Hollywood celebrities and rock stars would want to attend our events. So we allowed honorary members to join us. And thanks to you, Marlene, we have a special offer. If anyone goes onto our website at APBPA.org, again, that's APBPA.org, they can become an honorary member. We know with everything that's going on, everyone can use a break. So instead of 150, it'll be 100 for this 2020 season. It's an annual membership. And if you put in promo code SABR IWBC, all squished together, one word. Again, that's SABR IWBC. It is $100 for an annual membership, fully tax deductible, and you will get such great karma from being a part of this. This is the real deal. We have the trust of integrity from the last 100 years. We also have 20-year lifetime memberships. We have honorary lifetime memberships. And for the first time ever, we have youth memberships. We have united all the professional coaches under our umbrella. We're working to bring back what's been lost to baseball. Ted Williams was really adamant that Pepper not be lost. And so we have a youth program where they can be a member for $100 annually. And then also they can submit their videos, and all our coaches will do a think tank, like a brainstorming on it for them. So we're really excited for everything that's coming together. So there's a ton of different ways to get involved. We also would love anybody to be writing stories, you know, the writers, anybody that can help us get the word out about the tremendous good that we do. We need all hands on deck.
Excellent. Sounds like a wonderful opportunity to support good work. Before we move along, could you speak more to the mission of the organization, please?
Yes, absolutely. So originally it was, it's always been ball players helping ball players since 1924. And we've expanded that mission so that we've created holistic programs. So anything that our members approached us with, we created programs so that we could help them with that. And that includes, we have health and wellness benefits. Last year, specifically, a lot of our members came to us and said that the medical system was failing them and had sent them home to pass away. And it wasn't necessary. It was really a failure of our medical system. So in 4 days, we raised $30,000, and we leveraged that to bring $200,000 worth of stem cell treatments, hyperbaric oxygen, microcurrent therapy, and life-saving treatments. We do everything under our umbrella. We do mentoring and financial health education. 95% of all professional athletes go bankrupt within 5 years, no matter what they make. So we have asset protection services. Yeah, it's there's so much, you know, that I never realized before how much those those who employed in professional baseball, how much they sacrifice. So our members are typically, they give their all physically and mentally and emotionally, and they come to us dragging limbs and with PTSD. Even the ones who won World Series and retired on their own terms tell us they couldn't get out of bed for 3 years. This brotherhood and this family really does mean everything to them. And we work in conjunction with MLB, but we are separate from MLB. The reason being so that we can offer full confidentiality and no judgment, no stigma, completely safe. What comes to us goes no further. And we pull them back from suicide and anything that they need, we do. We also do residency. We've helped and advocated for those and their families who wanted to stay in our country, and we won on all of them and got them citizenship. So we do a lot of work under our umbrella, a lot of different programs, and mental health and wellness, you know, has been a huge part of it, and reaching out to the youth and special needs community. And so
that's
there's a
excellent.
lot of things.
I had no idea. How did you get involved, Jennifer? You're the first woman to be president of the organization. What's that like?
Thank you. Yeah. Yes, it's been quite a journey. So I have studied a lot of life philosophies that teach us that the physics is that we are creating our own realities with the energy that we put out. And I, along with being a business and technology coach, was also a realtor for 14 years, and doing the coaching helped offset the ups and downs of real estate. So I had worked for $300,000, and I had full custody of my daughter, and the builder turned out to be a shyster and pocketed the money, and my broker didn't back me up. He said it wasn't worth going after. And so I'm a newly single mom, and I've learned from everything I've studied that in these moments we have faith, and I've learned how to meditate to quiet the monkey mind, and that when we pray from our hearts, that's when we move mountains. So I did my meditating, and I said, put those in front of me who I'm supposed to help. And I wrote a Craigslist ad, and this all came out of that. I did have to fly in and do a whole weekend of interviews. And they said I was the ringer. I started out as a supportive role, and then was elected president this last December at the winter meetings. So it's been quite an honor and quite a journey. And I love helping those who we help. It's very valuable to be of service.
Congratulations. The association is very busy. Can you talk a little bit about what you do on a day-to-day basis? Are you putting out fires?
Yes, it is. It is, you know, I like to say that we get in the weeds easily. So, and thankfully everyone's bears with us. And I've learned the value of having a team. Originally, when I came in, there were 2 employees to 101,000 members, but that goes back to the 1920s. So it was quite a task. And I've learned that a team, especially a team of strong women, that's how this all happens. On the day-to-day, it depends on what anyone comes to us with. We find a way, no matter what they need, to find the resources. There's a network in here that anything they need, we can meet their needs. So we have Allie Crandall and Marianne Costello are also in our day-to-day office, and we have an intern, thankfully, as well. And we have a team of well-known ball players. You know, this is from the Brotherhood, for the Brotherhood, and for the baseball family. So we have Marianne Costello is our Director of Health and Wellness. Dr. Smoke Patterson is our Director of Mental Health Services. He's a retired MLB sports psychologist. Ray Holbert is our Director of Former Player Services. Mark Aker is our Director of Educational Resources and Business Skills Services. Ike Blessett Jr. is our Director of Youth Services. Fernando Arroyo is our Director of MLB Youth Clinics. Rudy Arias, our Director of International Player Services. Perry Barber, our Director of Women's Services. Eric Sable and Randy Lurch have stood up to be our directors of addiction services for opioid addiction and alcoholism. That's another service. We offer free rehabs and sobriety resources, whatever they need. We're able to pull strings and always get them in. We also have Steve Bumbry and Matthew Replinger. They're doing alternative therapies and yoga and mindfulness. and bringing that to everybody. We have a spiritual retreat, an online one that'll be coming up. Stephen Bunbury is putting that together, and he's Al Bunbury's son. So it's just incredible. And one of the things that is just came out was Jim Campanis Jr. Has offered free professionally produced podcasts for everybody. And that goes out to any of you guys. If you want to have a weekly free podcast, let us know. Get a hold of Allie or Marianne, and we can provide that for you under our umbrella. We're really excited about that. Help everybody promote their individual missions, and we can do a lot of good. We've formed a team for tremendous good. So a lot of work to do and to be done, but with the team, it's happening.
So it sounds like your role is to manage and direct all of these people and the services that they can provide.
Thank you. Yes,
I've learned the power of delegating.
Yeah. Thank you. Without delegating, I was 12 to 15-hour days at that point.
So we've heard a lot about challenges that women have faced in the industry, and I'm sure you've had your fair share. Any words of advice for how best to deal with the challenges that come up?
Yeah, so I would say 99% of all those we deal with are so cordial and respectful. It has been absolutely wonderful. A lot of our members call me Miss Jenny on their own, and tiptoe around me is the way I see it. And I mean, if they make a joke, they'll immediately say, oh, did I disrespect you, and apologize. And that's been incredible to experience. That said, there has been definitely, I'm sure any woman, and women have come forward since I have been appointed president to share their stories, and to find that I was not an exception, that I was a norm, was very eye-opening. I would say 1% of those I deal with, there's been some ugliness, and it is damaging to us women on multiple levels. And it changed me in a way that it created where we wanted to always help women going forward. So I'm so grateful that you gave us this platform and that you are holding these annual conventions for women. It is so important that women know they're not alone, and that they know there is a supportive team around them. I've learned a lot of lessons, just on the go, and one of them was to always have really strong boundaries. One of the sentences, Perry Barber helped me, and Donna Cohen, so simple, but keep it professional. You don't have to explain yourself, but, just saying that goes a long way. One of the other challenges that I dealt with, and I think, a lot of us are doing it in our society anyway, but especially women, is that we give our all. I became the stump of the giving tree, and my team was, prohibiting me from calling myself the stump. But, when you give your all, and we wear it as a badge of courage, the long hours and the always being on call 24/7, I've learned that there's a reason you have to take time to reset and relax and let your mind catch up. This has been a very intense journey. So I love this. We've created a Facebook group now for warrior women, and we want to be a voice of encouragement and hope and camaraderie, and really let everybody feel safe. And we can take the masks off, we can talk about our stories and be eye to eye, but there is work to be done for sure. I don't want any women damaged ever again by lack of respect or unprofessionalism.
Thank you very much. We've certainly heard great advice from so many women on this conference about how to deal with challenges and how to move forward through this. And the network and support idea is huge. So this kind of leads me into the air. I was excited to hear about the women's division that the association has recently started. Could you talk a little bit more about that? And maybe we'll bring in some of your staff to just say hello.
Yes, thank you. So we're very excited. We created Women's Services, a whole division, and Perry Barber, the umpire, is the director of that. And under her, we have Melissa Mayu. She is the first woman eligible to be drafted MLB. And both those women have just had such courage and such innovative, pioneering ideas on how to help women going forward and change the landscape. And we have Allie Crandall and Marianne Costello. They've been my right-hand women. And Marianne is on her second season of a Comcast show. We call her the next Oprah. We also have Kat Ree. She is on a ton of boards. She runs a $100 million venture capital fund and has been incredible. Those are our 5 main ones, and there are so many others who have come in. We have Jane Fendelman is a counselor. She did a PTSD release for everybody. Online, we'll be bringing more of those. She does PTSD releases for first responders. Our thought process with creating these women's services were that we need to be family oriented. Our ball players don't operate in a vacuum. And by supporting the warrior women around them, it really helps the dynamic of everything. Because a lot of times our members, the wives, the girlfriends, they would call before the ball players would. So, and we also wanted the women to know that they're always a part of this family, the widows, the daughters. God forbid, you know, when the ball players pass on, it means a lot to them that this family is there for everybody. So, you know, it's really, and especially getting through the times that we are now, it's just been so wonderful and supportive. And I know personally, without these strong women beside me, I couldn't have made it as far as I have. And so I just know from firsthand experience, it gives you your power. And it's wonderful because as powerful as women are, I see us using and utilizing our power for good, for tremendous good. And I love seeing that. You know, there's no egos in here.
That's great. Can the women who Marianne and Melissa, Perry, Allie, could you turn on your video so we can see you for a minute? I see Perry.
Jennifer. Hi, Allie.
Hi, Perry.
Marianne, Kat. Good to see all of you.
Perry, as the director of the women's division, do you want to say anything quickly to that,
Sure.
Marianne? Alice, nice to see you.
I will make a brief speech about the women's division because I'm so proud of Jennifer for initiating it in the first place after her organization kind of dragging its feet for so long, sort of depending on a very old model for everything. And Jennifer has worked really hard to bring it forward into the 20th century and get everything online and streamlined and functioning properly and efficiently in ways that it did not before she came on board. And getting women involved and honoring and welcoming us as members is a huge step forward that she basically thought of doing, and it was about time. And it took some convincing for the previous leadership to understand that this was an important and inevitable step. But Jennifer pushed really hard for it and made it happen. And as a result, I think the first women who were permitted as members a couple of years ago were Maybell and Shirley of the AAGPBL, and subsequently all of the other living members of the AAGPBL, and the women who played in the Negro Leagues as well. So up until then, it had been an all-male organization. Mm-hmm. And only now is the leadership beginning to understand that working with a ball player, as Jennifer pointed out, is not a matter of somebody living in a bubble. Everybody who isn't in a bubble, like the NBA bubble right now, has people around him or her that are an integral part of his existence and his reality, and that addressing the needs and health and mental health and other issues of those people, as well as the target person, is so important to the overall picture of health and happiness, which is what Jennifer's organization is a gift to all of us for helping ensure that ball players who do often slip through the cracks because of technicalities with contracts or years of service or all sorts of other reasons, not quite enough time to get a pension, they're the ones that turn to the APBPA for help and assistance and guidance. And that's what Jennifer does. And now she's, like I said, incorporating all of the women in the lives of those ball players, as well as the women who have played ball and been in pro ball themselves. So that is a huge step forward, and I'm just very happy to be part of that.
Could one of you speak to the long-term goals of the women's division?
Well, I would like to see many more women join as either honorary members or as time progresses, as women who merit inclusion because they have been professional baseball, in the different categories that are eligible for membership in the APBPA. And also, you know, the rules may change over time as well, so that women will be admitted on a more expansive basis. You know, that probably will take a bylaws change. So all of that takes time. But increased participation by women, increased highlighting of women's contributions to the organization, and not just now, but in the past as well, because I'm sure there's lots of hidden history of the APBPA that we're all going to love hearing about someday. So things like that. Just
thank you. That was actually something we were going to get to later. I was thinking of the women's division with the family support. So
yes,
along the same lines.
Right. It's a totally holistic approach to helping ball players who otherwise would not have the kind of support that they need and deserve once they're out of pro ball. Because there are a lot more of them than there are ones still in it. And some of them just really are so lost without baseball. And Jennifer really steps up for them. And I mean, I've seen her on the phone, you know, at all hours of the day and night with, you know, grown men crying because they're in such dire straits. And it's really a wonderful thing to see them get on the right track again because of the help that the APBPA offers.
Well, I'm delighted to learn about all of this. And Marianne and Allie and Melissa, thank you for showing your faces here, and maybe one of these days we'll have an entire presentation. Jennifer, let's get back to you. Could you talk about the relationship with MLB?
Yes, so we work in conjunction with MLB, and they wrote our first check when we were created in 1924. The Honorable Judge Kennesaw Mountain Landis wrote our first check, and we have a picture of it. And ever since then, we've been endorsed and supported by MLB. We're always in there at spring training. Our lifeblood is our dues list, where we go into the clubhouses and have current players sign up. And a lot of teams also will match the player dues annually. So we're really working to get those teams thanked publicly on all of our platforms to help pressure the ones who aren't participating as much. But it's really been incredible what MLB has done, and the different factions have been endorsing us. MLB Players Association, the alumni, Arizona alumni, and we've been invited to their MLB, the baseball meetings, the winter meetings, where they have had us in the women in baseball events. And we look forward to working even closer with them with our youth program. We're working to bring back what's been lost to the inner cities. A lot of the programs have the MLB Play Ball we have connected with, so that we can all work harder and fill in the gaps and not have to all reinvent the wheel and do tremendous good, starting with the youth. And we would love to work more with MLB and their women events. We have a lot of suggestions from the ones we have attended, and we absolutely applaud what they are doing, their inclusiveness, their diversity. They've really stepped up a lot. We're seeing more compassion out of MLB than we've ever seen. Instead of it just being a hardline business decisions as we're used to, we're seeing them really put in an effort. A lot of their meetings have been about philanthropy and giving back, and we really applaud that. We would love for the meetings to even be more inclusive and be even more supportive. One of the things that had come up was them talking about character traits, and in one of the meetings it was suggested that character traits are static and can't be changed, and we can tell you firsthand, courage can be cultivated when you need it, and things like that. So we have some suggestions to make them even more encouraging for women, but we still applaud their efforts, and we absolutely love them. The bridge with MLB is imperative, and so we are endorsed by them, and we're grateful that they seem to have turned a new leaf and are working to show more compassion for the baseball brotherhood and family.
Well, thank you very much. I've learned a lot about the association, and I look forward to keeping in touch and finding out how you grow. Kind of going through chat, a couple of comments about how is Dick Beveridge doing. Say hello to him.
Yes, Dick is doing great. He just retired. He's 85, I believe. So yes, and he devoted 30 years of his life for this work. So we definitely, we're really looking forward to carrying that forward for the next 100 years. We have a strong 100-year plan going forward.
Cecilia has posted information about membership, and Leslie posted a link to the website and the discount code. I'm very curious, and we have Lonnie still on the line. Do you work with agents? Lonnie, do you work with the association?
If you're asking me, we definitely work with agents. We would love to connect with Lonnie. Absolutely. When we connect with the agents, we can be more proactive, getting our message out and letting these players know that there is a family and a brotherhood that is supporting them all the way from, any level that they're on. So.
Excellent. Excellent. Let me see what else is here. There was an autocorrect of mob to MLB, and there's a lot of jokes in the chat about that. So look at it later. Any last questions for Jennifer or anybody on her team? Well, I want to thank you.
To be able to say hi.
Thank you, Jennifer and Allie and Marianne and Perry for sharing about your work, and we look forward to keeping in touch and finding out how you grow and develop. It's an exciting venture and an important support group that you're doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and we invite everybody to join us. Thank you.
Leslie, I see you're here.
I figured you were
You've never left.
Nope, I'm here, and I think I'm gonna call up, I hope Kat's gonna join me here too, and then Marlene and Tara, if you're gonna help with the raffle when we get to that momentarily.
Whatever you need.
Awesome. Kat, do you want to say anything, or do you want me to just pull up the screen and let it?
Well, why don't you pull up the screen and then I'll just talk a little bit about what they are and what
it's coming here.
Yeah, so we had hoped to have this beforehand, but this is hot off the press. We have these shirts available. at Rockford Art Deli. For those of you who are not local to Rockford, know that Rockford Art Deli is a small business that is really dedicated to making sure that everything is done in the right way. He is doing these shirts. This will be a pre-order only. And Leslie's going to put the link to his website in the chat. As you can see, the cost of this shirt is $25, and the IWBC gets $10 for every shirt. And that is just an amazing, generous thing that Jared is doing. And so we wanted to get these out there. This is a pre-order only, as I said. There's also a men's shirt. Leslie, I don't know if you have that up or not. There's there we go. Not a different design, but so you can go to the Rockford Art Deli website and purchase these shirts. They will not start printing until they have probably 2 dozen or more. But we're going to keep these up for a while. And this is a one of a kind and a hopefully a nice commemorative shirt for this fantastic event. So thank you to Rockford Art Deli. And thank you in advance for all of you that go out there and buy bundles of shirts for Christmas and things like that.
So I just put the link in the chat, and also we'll be sending it out to everybody who's registered, along with some other things that we'll be sending you. But and the date, of course, will allow you to further educate people when they ask you why that date is on there. And so that was the idea. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to do our raffle. And so Marlene and Tara are going to help me, as I'm simply using a name generator, a random name generator, and I put everybody's into that. And I will just read off the names, and then Tara, I'll let you do the first 10 or 11, and then Marlene will do the others, and they'll just tell you what you won, and then know that anybody that wins, we will be mailing out whatever the various raffle prizes to you. So let me go ahead and pull up my name generator. Hang on just a moment. All right, so here we go. And no, you can't see it because I can't get it to play, but I'm just gonna run this and tell you the names. So our very first winner is Mary Smith.
Mary Smith, you have won the F. A. Manley biography by Bob Luke.
All right, and our second winner is Adrian Straker.
Adrian, you have won the cap, lunchbox, and string bag from Tin Caps.
Okay, and number 3, Sydney Anderson.
Sydney, you have won the autographed cap by Alberto Rosario from the Reno Aces.
Number 4 is Shakia Taylor.
Shakia Taylor, you've won the Girls of Summer palette. It's 4 eyeshadows and 2 blushes, and there's a little description. I don't know if you need to read the description or not, but yeah,
fine.
Basically it's the classic color palette from the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League 75th anniversary collection, and honors all the teams. So
Number 5 is Carol. Is it Lobby or Lob? I think it's Lobby.
Carol has won an autographed photo of Cameron Hayward of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
All right, and then Krista Readout.
Krista has won the Girls of Summer Go to Havana palette. It's 4 eyeshadows and 2 blushes that also honors the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League 75th anniversary collection.
Okay.
And the players headed to Cuba for spring training.
All right, and next is Daniel Moody.
Daniel has won the autographed Reno Aces 2019 Team Baseball.
And next is Christy Fain.
Christy Fain has won the poster of NL Women from Pedro Sierra.
And next up is Lisa Alexander.
Lisa Alexander has won the Rockford Peaches cap. There's a 1 next to it. I guess there's more than 1.
Yep.
Okay.
And Kathy Leogrand.
Kathy Leogrand has won the Great Woman in Sports Collection for nail polishes. And they're basically honoring great women in sports. That's what it is.
Okay. And then the next one is Justin Compton.
Justin Compton has won the Autographed Baseball by Chris Davis, Oakland A's Chris Davis.
Okay.
Okay, and the next, I'm going to pass it off to Marlene now.
All right. Marlene, are you ready?
Tara, do you have the rest of the names? The rest of the prizes?
So the rest of the prizes? Yeah, I do.
Okay, why don't, if you don't mind, I don't have that list.
Oh,
okay.
I can do the rest then.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
All right.
Going.
All right. So number 12 is Jay Hurd.
Jay Hurd has won, the bobblehead set. Tony Stone, Mamie Peanut Johnson, and Connie
Morgan. Yeah.
Connie Morgan. Sorry.
Okay. Well, that's a popular one, Jay.
Yes.
All right. Next one is Soraya Urquiza.
Soraya Urquiza has won 4 Stellar Lipsticks and Gloss Tint Wand. This also honors the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League 75th Anniversary Collection.
Okay. And next up is Emily Yonan.
Emily Yonan has won a cap and t-shirt in Greenville Drive.
Okay. Next up is Christine Whitlock.
Christine Whitlock has won an author-signed copy of the Encyclopedia of Women in Baseball.
Okay. And the next one after that is John Munns.
John Munns has won Rockford Peaches cap.
Okay. And then we have Jenna Weinstein.
Jenna Weinstein has won an autographed book, Isabel Lefty Alvarez.
Okay. And then we have Jimmy Frazier.
Jimmy Frazier has won a rare 2008 AAGBPL calendar, which includes baseball cards of every player and 42 signatures. That's a really cool prize.
Yes, it is. All right. And then Stacy Moss Paul.
Stacy, you've won the autographed baseball from Chris Bryant of the Cubs.
Wow. Another one. Okay. And then we have Katavia Carricker.
Katavia, you've won the F. A. Manley book, Negro Baseball Before Integration.
Okay. And I believe, if I'm correct, we're on our last one.
Yes, this is the grand prize.
All right. So here it goes. And our last one goes to Justin Compton.
Justin Compton, you've won a personal phone call from Peoria Red Wing and IWBC founder Maybelle Blair.
Woohoo! Very cool.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah. So thanks, everybody. I see there.
Wow, she's 92.
Yes, she is. So
Great.
thanks, everybody. And all of those things will be mailed out to all of our various winners. And so I'm going to turn it over to Kat now to finish us up.
Thank you, Leslie. Those are some pretty impressive raffle prizes. Wow, we did it. We're here at the end of 3 days of amazing presentations, and I'm really blown away. I want to thank all of you, now nearly 170 of you who have participated in one way or the other in this conference. The second annual SABR IWBC Women in Baseball Conference. We can assure you there will be a third annual Women in Baseball Conference. This has just been fantastic. You know, it could take another 3 days to thank all the people that really need to be thanked. But there are a few people that I want to make sure we mention. And first and foremost, and please leave your video on, Leslie. I know you keep saying, no. But your expertise, put that back on, your expertise, your knowledge, and your just absolute dedication to women in baseball and the Negro League celebration and the IWBC is just unmatched. And we are very, very proud that you work with us, and we cannot thank you enough for all you've done to pull off this conference. So thank you from all of us, and certainly from me personally. Thank you very much. There are a lot of other people to thank, of course, not the least of which is Scott Bush, who is the CEO of SABR. Scott has been supportive of the IWBC and of this conference from its first mention. And we so appreciate the full force of SABR behind this. And we just feel very fortunate. We at the IWBC feel very fortunate to be partnered with SABR, of course, an organization that's been around a long time and one that we all respect greatly. I also want to thank Rockford University. I mean, you know, President Fulcomer, you know, you too were right there from the beginning. You said yes, of course, and you opened your arms to us when we thought we were going to be there on campus. There was no question. And to the folks who work at Rockford University, to the faculty members, Doctors Kathy Headley and her unbelievable group of students.
Where is Kathy? Can Kathy come on?
Kathy,
Kathy, are you there?
Kathy, there you are. Kathy Headley was another one of those people we sat at Starbucks and I said, hey, what do you think about this? Yeah, I'm on it. I'm on it. And she has been that way from day one. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Her students have been spectacular. They're the reason, in large part, we're here. And of course, Dr. Catherine Forsland, one of her students, Mark, designed the cover of the book that you're going to get. And Mary Weeks Baxter. There have been just countless people from Rockford University. So thank you all. And again, the many, many people, the presenters, the folks who hosted, you all have been just incredible. I want to make a couple of short just reminders. Leslie reminded you that your book, your souvenir book that you're going to get, along with some other swag that you will get from your registration, will be mailed to you very shortly, also by Rockford University students, I might add. Also, your raffle prizes will be mailed, well, except Maybell. The rest of them, however, should show up in the mail to you. I also want to make a couple of other reminders, announcements. You know, the SABR IWBC partnership is really new and just beginning, but we support each other and we work together. And I would like to ask that all of you, if you're not a member of SABR, please go to sabr.org and become a member. They do fantastic work. And as soon as you're done with that, go to internationalwomensbaseballcenter.org and become a member of the IWBC. These conferences only work because we all work as a team, and the conferences and so many other things that we have planned in the future will happen with your help. I also want to mention something that I mentioned a couple days ago, and that is, if you are interested, especially folks in Rockford, anybody that's interested in preserving women's history, women's baseball history, please go to the International Women's Baseball Center's website and sign up for our virtual town hall scheduled for October 21st at 7 p.m. Eastern. We are going to unveil some amazing plans and some exciting things, and there will be local and state leaders there. There will be Rockford folks, a lot of baseball folks. 2020 has been rough on us, all of us, but we're going to unveil some pretty exciting stuff to come. So please join us and pass the word. So I also want to say to you to be on the lookout for a survey that is going to come your way. Leslie and the conference committee has put together a survey. We really want to hear your comments about this conference, but also your ideas for the next one. So please, when that comes your way, take a few minutes. It won't take long. Take a few minutes and send it back to us, because we want this to get bigger and better every year. And the one way that that's going to happen is if we hear from you. And lastly, I just want to say, and this is this is something that comes from me personally. This kind of event, where I look into sometimes the live and sometimes the still faces of all these amazing men and women who have one very important thing in common, and that is that they believe in the long history of girls and women in all phases of baseball internationally. White women, Cuban women, African-American women. We're all here because we believe in that. We believe in that history, and we believe in what that history can do going forward. And if we take that history out of the shadows and we bring it out and we show young girls today, look what you stand on. Look what you stand on. Then we can do our part. And I think events like this will allow us to continue to do that. So thank you. Gosh, what are we going to do for the next couple of days, not checking in with one another? I say Leslie is wagging a finger at me.
I just want to, because I'm afraid you're going to dismiss everybody before. I just simply want to add one more. And I just want to have everybody to say thank you to Kat, because Kat is the driving force behind all of these things. She keeps everything moving together. And all of this would not happen. And so I just want to say from all of us, Kat, for everything that you do, and nobody has any idea as the president of these, the work that you put in behind the scenes to make this all happen. So we're all here because of the work that you put in, and we get these opportunities because of people like you. So I just wanted to say thank you for everything, because this has been an amazing experience.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And you know what? We're all going to miss seeing each other in these little squares. But yeah, take this knowledge with you. Take this knowledge, take this excitement, take the energy that those young women brought to us at this morning and go with it, make all that happen. So thank you all again, and we'll see you next year.
Yep. Plan on it for next year, everybody, in Rockford.
There you go, in Rockford.
Pretty cool.
Wow.
Thanks, everybody.
Wow, Kathy, you look stunned.
Hey, I'm turning the recording off.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Excellent. Sorry.